of liberty, in the fires of hope and prayer, with boundless faith in our destiny, we solemnly declare, side by side we stand, islands of the blue Caribbean Sea, this our native land. We pledge our lives to thee. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. Here every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation.
Heavenly Father, we come before you at the start of this new day, giving thanks for life, for health, and the opportunity to serve through this station. We ask for your divine presence to guide us in all we do. Bless this broadcast, that it may be a source of inspiration, joy, and unity to all who tune in. Whether near or far, may our words uplift, our music heal, and our message bring light to those who need it most. We pray for our listeners, wherever they may be. Grant them strength for the day ahead, peace in their hearts, and success in all they put their hands to. Cover those traveling with your protection, and those at home with your comfort and provision. Lord, may everything we do bring honor to you and be a blessing to others. Guide our steps, bless our efforts, and let this station be a vessel of positivity and hope. In your name we pray. Amen.
Your voice, your soundtrack, your station. New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Don't cry, oh no, no. Just remember that God is standing by. Hold on, yeah. When you have heartaches, don't cry, oh no, oh no. Just remember that God is standing by. Sometime when your burden is down, just remember God is standing by. Thank you, Lord. So there's no need to cry. God is standing by. Thank you, Lord. So don't you worry and don't cry. No, no. When you have troubles, don't cry. Oh no, oh no. Just remember that God is standing by. When you come running over, just remember God is standing by.
Rise up. It's the Net Radio Breakfast Show. Bringing you the energy, music, and vibes to start your day right.
And that is what we are all about, making sure that we start your day very right. Good morning, everybody, wherever you may be. Good to have you here on this God bless day. It's a Wednesday. It's a Reggae-matic Wednesday. 6 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock. Looking good at this point in time as we welcome you all to New Era. TT Radio. Taking you above and beyond. So Charles, that is me. It's inside here with you. You know, we're going to have a really fantastic time, right? Much thanks to the Heavenly Father for bringing us together for another day. And of course, this is your Get Up and Go. This is the Breakfast Show.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Wake up, it's a brand new dawn. The Breakfast Show got the vibes turned on. From Maracas Bay to the Savannah line, let's start the day in Caribbean prime. Good vibes rolling through the air. The Breakfast Show, energy everywhere. We talk, we laugh, we make you think. Grab your doubles or your morning drink.
Well, I have my morning drink for sure. I just rushed and got that coffee. Yes, I forgot my coffee this morning. So you see me scrambling before we get on come out live in studio. So good morning to our listeners and viewers wherever you are across the planet, and welcome to the Breakfast Show this morning, Wednesday, the 30th of April. It's the last day of April before we head into obviously May and get closer and closer to the rainy season. You know, I love the rainy season, right? So good morning to you all. Hope you're having a fantastic morning, whatever you're doing, getting ready for work, getting ready to watch us, and have a great morning ahead for you. Of course, I want to say a special good morning to my co-host, Wendell Stephen, and my co-hosts, Wendell Stephen and Sir Charles. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Richard Raghubar Singh and Sir Charles Davis. Good morning, our listeners and viewers all over this wonderful globe, especially those who viewed us yesterday. You have set new records. We have been on radio a long time, as you know, on online radio, a little while now, at least 4 years, Richard? Could be about?
No, not 4 years.
Yeah.
All the older people has traveled fast, you know.
2021 was about thereabouts, not so?
It was about 2023.
Only then we went online?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm sure. I think it was somewhere in 21.
Richard is the one getting old and not
it's about 2023 we formalize. Oh, you mean?
Oh.
Okay. Nah, maybe you're right. I think it was 2022. 2022,
yeah.
I think.
All right. So those
COVID was on
yesterday.
Yeah, when they're right.
Yeah, I know I'm always right, Sir Charles. And a lot of people know that by now. I was right about, anyway, I'll get into the politics later. But good morning, but you helped us create a record yesterday. Believe it or not. Yesterday was a record-breaking day for the Breakfast Show. Whatever iteration you think it was in. Yesterday was a record-breaking show. And we want to thank you, the people who watch us, who listen to us, who go back and look at us, who ask people to look at us. You know, we really want to thank you. You know? Yep.
And like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You know, our goal is to get to 100,000 subscribers. We have lofty goals because you're supposed to have lofty goals. So 100,000 subscribers is what we're aiming for. We're a little way off, but, you know, we'll get there. So, of course, a special good morning to all of you all again. And, of course, you know we always start the program with good news. What's the good news? What's the good news for today, Wendell?
Yeah, of course, my good news for today is that Trinidad and Tobago should hold their heads very high because once again we have conducted free and fair elections in Trinidad and Tobago. via the democratic process. It was absolutely
free, fair, and without violence. You know, so many countries have violence and stuff.
And the smooth transitioning from one party, one government to the next, again took place in Trinidad and Tobago. Despite what the little quarrels here and there and the little idiosyncrasies and the issues we've had in the past, there was another smooth transition from one government to the next.
Yeah, that smooth transition is in process, I guess.
Yes.
But yes, you're right. The citizens of Trinidad and Tobago deserve another round of applause.
Mm-hmm. You know what that applause song, right? When I sang at Queen's Hall.
Oh,
you know, it was a little louder, but that applause reminds me of that.
So Charles, you have anything to say about that?
I don't know. How long ago that was? When
I sang.
No!
Hold on.
How long ago that was?
Sorry, that no was an inner thought, but it came out.
Listen to me. Grasshopper Green was a comical chap. He lived on the best affairs. Bright little trousers, jacket and tie. They were his summer.
All right, thank you, Wendell. Give Wendell a round of applause privately at home, wherever you are. I tell you. There are always lots to discuss on the breakfast show. Lots to discuss. Of course, in the politics and all that's happening. Of course, the results kept shifting back and forth yesterday because we were 2 days out of the election, and the results kept shifting back and forth. Is it 26? Is it 27? You know, is it 12? Is it 13? I think they picked two numbers somewhere there. If you're good enough to work it out.
24. Somebody posted that last time. The Kamala Prasad predecessor won, 24 played, and 24 apparently played yesterday again. So the person posted the ticket where they played it in the 4 draws and they won.
In the 4 draws?
Huh?
In the 4 draws they played?
No, the person in one of the 4 ticket that they played it in all 4 draws because they figure you know them play with zombies all this thing.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, you have 26, you have 27, you have 12, you have 13, and you have 2. Between those 5 numbers, the pick 2 might be in there somewhere. Yes.
Yeah.
So you try your variations. You NLCB players who play pick 2 religiously.
The stars might just line up.
Yeah.
So it's 26-13, right? I think that's what it is now.
Is that final? We don't even know if it's final yet because
there were three recounts.
Brian Manning, are those recounts completed?
The San Fernando East recount is finished, so Brian Manning is confirmed as winning. I don't know what's happening in Aruka. Well, is it Aruka Maloney? That's Camille Robinson Regis, and the other recount is in Malabar Mausica with Dominic Romaine.
But how close were some of those recounts?
I don't know. Well, Brian Manning was over 600 votes.
Tobago is Tobago West. Which one is Shanford Joe? Tobago West.
She's Tobago West, yes.
She was 16 votes
short, yes.
Short of winning. Well, 17 votes short of winning. But
I don't know. I don't think the PNM has asked for any recount. You remember the political party has asked for the recount.
Yeah.
The PNM hasn't asked, as far as I'm aware, for any recount.
Yeah. They may not have asked for any recount in
Because I mean, if it's like 16, 20, I could ask for a recount. You understand? But when it's 100 and 200 and 300,
yeah, I didn't understand the basis of the recount in San Fernando East, but it was done, and it's Brian Manning has been confirmed as the winner. I know that because I saw that on Facebook for the morning, right?
Yeah.
But we have the member of parliament for Lopino Bonnier. Is that the constituency now?
Aruka Lopino.
Aruka Lopino, Mr. Marvin Gonzales. He will be our guest in the second hour, and of course, Dr. Marlene Attzs. All right, so don't turn your dial. Do not log off. Don't even go for coffee. Stay right there, because it promises to be as exciting as it was yesterday. Well, let me say hello to some people now, Richard, on the stream, because you know this list got very long yesterday.
Is this the you're going through the comments? You mean?
Yes.
All right, great.
Yes.
Let me know.
Basically, to say good morning to Suzanne Jessup, Ambrose Blah. Oh, shucks. Sorry, I touched that one. Ambrose Blah. The other one is good morning to the breakfast crew from Ambrose Blah. Go down, Richard.
Oh, you just read down, go.
Boy Bidesi from DB says good morning. Marcia Rock, good morning, gentlemen. Do have a great day. Miss Ingrid from Tucson, Arizona says good morning and blessings.
Good morning, Ingrid.
Next is Erica Charles says blessings to all. Thank God for life. Rest, relax, and rebuild and watch God work. All right. Marlon Motley says good morning.
Good morning, Marlon.
People call me Wendell Motley. I don't know why, because I guess it's a name that they know.
Everything is about you. You're getting a narcissistic kind of bug, you know.
I'm learning from somebody
You're getting a bug.
I'm learning from somebody who's going to come up on the chat, I'm sure, today. CJ from New York says good morning, wonderful people. Do have a great day. Cheryl Johnson says good morning, guys. Have a blessed day. Trinidad Margo, good morning, gentlemen. Carol Guevara, Lambert Bruce. Wayne Ramsey said awesome show yesterday. And Wayne Ramsey, you're so right. As I pointed out earlier on, our show yesterday went absolutely viral. Robert Taylor says good morning, guys. DL, good morning, breakfast crew, listeners and viewers. Patricia Defoe, great day all. Steph says good morning, guys. Miguel Gonzalez, morning, everyone. Sherwin Kerr, good morning, guys. And to all listeners and viewers, have a wonderful day. Champion of Democracy, Child of God, good morning, everyone. DL made a comment that she's missing certain people. We are not. Rena Jennings says good morning, blessings, have a great day. Gavin Frank says good morning. Morning, Gavin. Mrs. R says good morning, all. Alistair Hart, good morning.
Good morning, Mrs. R.
Even though
good morning,
some love to say, okay, some love to say we are dictatorship. No, we are not. Okay. All right, he's congratulating Mrs. Beckers Robinson for going over to the UNC camp and congratulate her opponent, even though she won. All right. DL, Richard, you are red and ready with that shirt. Is it red, Richard?
It's actually more orange than red.
That's what I thought. Siobhan Shogun says good morning, blessings. Carl M. Jack says blessed morning to all. Susie B says morning. Dominic Romain run his seat. All right, that's good to hear. We're gonna try to get back to Dominic also too, because actually where I live is in Dominic is the candidate. Now we haven't seen a candidate in here for a while, and I reached out to Dominic. I say, and he actually came the Sunday before elections and walked the area. I walked with him, you know what I mean? And I said, well, boy, this is the first time we see a candidate in here from any political party for a long time. So I was very happy that Dominic Romain reached out to us. Chris Tussell says, good morning, good morning. David Ware says, morning, peeps. Trisha Jordan also says, good morning. And Sonny, good morning from Just a Nice Guy. All right? So those are our greetings.
The president doesn't change, you know. I see Beauty Culture asking, who will be AGN president? You mean the president doesn't change. The president's process is independent of the general election.
Yeah. And she has just under 3 years left in her tenure.
Yeah.
It's a 5-year tenure. She's only served 2 years and 1 month. That's Mrs. Christine Kangaloo Garcia. She has just under 3 years left in her tenure. She does not change.
All right, so that was greeting. A lot of our people came
Let me just say good morning also to Kathy Ann. Good morning to you, gentlemen. She's saying, and that is Kathy Ann right here in Goya. So good morning to you, Kathy Ann. And also greetings from Brampton, Orlando, Canada. All right, and
Brampton, Orlando?
Yeah, well, that's where I said. Brampton.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Brampton, Ontario.
Oh, I want to know this. I know Brampton is in Ontario.
Ontario. So my bad. Yeah.
Yeah, Florida didn't come into it.
Yeah.
So, Bishop, good morning to you. Yeah, I think so. I think that is it for now.
Yeah. So
I mean,
Anthony Atwell, good morning to you also.
I mean, in so much as of course, it seems as if it's a record low turnout from the elections. When then you could correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the People's National Movement lost. Well, I shouldn't say lost, but well, of course they lost. But the amount of votes from 2020 to 2025 reduced considerably in terms of the PNM's count.
Yes. Let me give you this. Let me read this out for the folks who may not know, wouldn't know. In 2020, the total votes cast was 658,297. In 2025, it went down to 617,712. Now, bearing in mind, 2020 was also COVID, right? But it went down considerably this election. The amount of the percentage of eligible voters who turned out in 2020 was 58%. In 2025, 54.2%. The UNC votes in 2020 was 309,188. The votes in 2025, 334,874. The PNM votes in 2020 was 322,250. In 2025, there's where the difference is. It went down considerably to 220,160. Almost 102,000 people less casted their vote for the PNM.
That's a massive drop for the People's National Movement.
Massive.
And of course, there would be analysts looking at that to find out, well, why did that happen? What happened? Did these voters, did any of them migrate to the UNC? I'm sure some of them did, and some may have migrated to Patriotic Front. But Patriotic Front seemed to be the third party that did the best in terms of the numbers.
Well, let me give those numbers. Give those numbers, Richard. So the third party and independent votes in 2020 was 25,084. That went in this election to 60,770. That's an increase of 35,000 or thereabouts who went to the third parties and the independent. And also UNC vote would have gone up by about 25,000 or thereabouts, right? Almost 30, between 25 and 30,000. I didn't actually calculate the math, right? But 309 to 334, that's about 25,000, Richard?
Yeah, something around that.
And 35 in the independent and third party vote. That means 25 and 35 is what? Not 60? Am I correct? Yeah. So 60,000 votes may have very well shifted from the PNM to the UNC and third party. You understand? And when you look at it,
the third parties total you said was 60,770.
Yes.
So some of those PNM votes may have gone there, or those may have been some of the non-aligned votes that don't shift anyway, that they're just there, and or don't vote at all. But because you have a drop in the percentile of people voting from 58 to 54.2%, it means that obviously the choice was made by many people not to vote, because you have an electorate of 1.1 million people who are eligible to vote, and just a little over half voted.
Yes.
So what accounts for that kind of apathy from voters to not vote, to not give either party their vote? Of course, the PNM suffered the most from it.
Yes.
And I think that would be connected to incumbency. You've been there for 10 years, and of course, you will make mistakes during that 10 years, or you will do things that will aggravate people in that 10 years. So there were many people who obviously chose not to vote, but did not give their vote to the UNC.
Yes.
But decided, I'm not voting PNM.
That is true.
And you probably had a lot of those and a lot of those votes probably in safe seats or marginal seats. And some of those marginal seats, of course, went to the UNC. Because of those PNM people who voted PNM last time not coming out to vote.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to find out why was there such apathy. Now, connected to that, I'm seeing one of the stories in today, which was a little reminiscent of the Manning
of 2010.
Yeah, the Manning fiasco of 2010. You know, I always say that it's the PNM people that caused Mr. Manning to get ill. And you always tell me, oh, that's not true. And I stand by it. Because the abuse that man suffered when he lost the election, that snap election in 2010, and how he was berated by people as he left Balize House must have hurt him deeply.
Yeah.
And not to mention the kind of vitriol he must have gotten from people who were in the party itself and maybe at general council level and stuff like that. We wouldn't know, and we'll never know, probably.
Well, as I pointed out back then too, Mr. Manning would have called an election 2.5 years before time. In this case, it was just a matter of a few months again. But this is the third time PNM called an early election, and the third time they lost. And they didn't learn anything from the last two. They went and
this was less of a, is this you categorize this as an early election though?
Yes, Richard.
Because it was June, let's say it was June 2025. You had until August. August is when I think the term would have been formally expired,
September. And you had another 3 months up until November.
Yeah.
So technically you would have had 7 or their months.
And but in the year that you're supposed to call it. So.
Well,
but okay, I get you. If you believe in Jumbie and Bacchanal and I don't know if there are any PNM people who believe in Jumbie and Bacchanal, but let's assume there is. And if there are PNM people that believe in Jumbie and Bacchanal, then written into the PNM Constitution should be never call an early election.
No, let's go a little further than that, Richard, because we've been talking about constitutional reform for a long while. Let's put term limits. Let's set. Sorry, my apologies. That's not it.
Let's put term limits, or you mean fixed date?
Let's put fixed election date. That's what I wanted to say. Let's do that.
Our party is really interested in doing it because
we will pull that today.
But in 2010, that was one of the promises. Let's call it that. I think that the People's Partnership would have made. It would have set fixed limits, fixed terms.
Yes.
No, sorry. 2 terms for prime ministers maximum.
Yes.
And
fixed election date.
And fixed election dates.
Yes.
And it was not done.
Yes.
And they had the majority to do it. They may have the majority this time around again. And they didn't articulate anything like that on the platform. Maybe did they talk about term limits at all on the platform this time around? I'm not sure if they did.
Yeah.
But I think term limits are good. That's my opinion. I believe there should be term limits. So that this would be, in other words, the second and final time that Kama Prasad Desai could be prime minister. And Dr. Rowley would not be able to come back. Not that he's interested in. But I'm just saying, anyway, it wouldn't really matter because, however you frame the legislation to put in term limits, it would work. But I certainly think that term limits should be restricted to 2 terms. I know Dr. Rowley was not a fan of it. He felt that if you're being competent and you are a good leader, you should be a good leader for as long as you're there. I'm paraphrasing, but that's along the lines that he went. But yes, fixed dates should be, I have no problem with a fixed election date. Well, first of all, I find 5 years is too long. That's my personal opinion. Which I said last time, 2020, when PNM was elected, I said, I find 5 years is too long. I find it should be 4.
But it went pretty quick, you know.
It didn't go that quick, Wendell. And that is no berating of the PNM's, tenure. I'm just saying 5 years is long. It's half a decade. All right. If you are 15 now, in 5 years you'll be 20. Okay. If you're 70 now, 5 years you'll be 75. So it's to me it's a lot. I find 4 years is enough for you to prove your worth and whether you should get another 4 years. That's me. People may disagree. I know politicians like to say you need 5 years to do what you need to do. Really? There are plenty of things always don't do that. Always say all I was going to do in the 5 years that never gets done anyway. So who knows?
Lord. Look at that comment.
And you know, and who knows what's going to happen to all of those projects that the PNM had planned. I'm not so worried about highways and stuff. I think those are set things that both administrations tend to continue with in one way or the other, the infrastructure, the road infrastructure. And I know there is a national plan that for road infrastructure that would have been done under Patrick Manning. Of course, there would have been versions before that. But I know Patrick Manning would have commissioned one because he felt that you should be nowhere in Trinidad and Tobago, that you shouldn't be able to get to somewhere else within an hour. And I think that's the plan in terms of the road network. So I'm assuming that the new UNC government will further that kind of infrastructure.
Yeah.
But there's so many other projects. You have the Toko port, you have things like that. Are they going to continue with that? And I think that's a government-to-government arrangement. I'm thinking, I'm not so sure. I think was it something signed with China Railways? So maybe since I'm a little uninformed about who actually it was. But you know, anytime you do things with China, it always kind of have a government-to-government feel about it. It always does. So China Railways. So you have all of those projects that we know the PNM was touting that will come in the next 5 years. But that Togo port was coming a long time. Long time. It was coming since 2020. That is the
Richard, you know one of the people we have to talk.
That is second to the coming of Jesus. That port.
You know one of the people we have to speak with earlier o'clock is and we seeking our interest here in Arima is Philip Watts and that flyover by Tampuna Road that causes Tampuna Road, the bottom of Tampuna Road, just chock full of businesses now. It's chaotic down the end there. You understand? I don't know if.
Well, when we spoke to Foster Cummings back in 2020,
right,
he said,
so that's
we will deal with it. Yes, that's a priority. It's high on the agenda. But the old people like always do Wendell.
Headlines.
Anyway, maybe I should get to the headlines. Oh,
maybe
did he just say headlines?
Maybe you should.
Did he just say headlines?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Oh my God! Thank you, Sir Charles Khan. So let me do. I was taken aback when there. Did you see the taken abackness in my face?
I wasn't. We've been abused for so many years. I wasn't. You know when that custom guy licks you all right in it sometimes?
It's not abuse, all right?
Okay. So anyway, let me get to the headlines and then we can take some calls from our listeners and viewers across the planet. So we take some calls after I do the news headlines before we get to our poll this morning. And of course, we have a choice of polls this morning. So let me start with the headlines.
Hold on. Steph, boy, I'll delete your comments, you know. You see what he put? Sir Charles Khan, Wendell Stephen Paul.
Well, it just stopped in my tracks from reading.
You should put Richard Paul Richards. That's what you should put. Richard Raghubar Singh Richards.
Oh. Anyway, let's start with the Trinidad and Tobago Garden for this morning. Low voter turnout. That's the headline this morning on the Trinidad and Tobago Garden. And just in case you did not know, today is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. Or if you are in fact a time traveler and did not know where you landed.
Tomorrow is
April 30th, 2025. So Wednesday, April 30th. Low voter turnout. EBC confirms 26 seats for UNC, 13 for PNM, and 2 for TPP in election, in which 54% cast ballots. So that's the main story. Point Fortin changes hands. That's the other story. That's on the front page this morning of the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian. On the back page, Permall and Anderson take CWI to court. So that's the front and the back. I'm kind of zooming through the headlines this morning so we can get to your calls. Front page of the Daily Express this morning. Rage against Rowley. After massive election loss, PNM General Counsel to court for former PM's resignation today. Wasn't he resigning anyway? PNM General Counsel.
Yeah, but if you know the drama, Richard. You understand?
Yeah, but he was resigning anyway.
The general
So
counsel
after all the man take all it to wait, let me pump in him a little bit this morning. So the gentleman, the goody gentleman, and he is a strong orator on the platform. Dr. Rowley is. He is very strong. He led you all to 2 victories in general elections, and because all they get a 3rd loss, all they want the man to resign and blaming him and being vitriolic, just like you all were with Prime Minister Manning. And this was always going to be an uphill battle for the PNM, in my opinion, because incumbency, after 10 years, you are at a disadvantage.
Richard, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Always.
Why you sound like you one of the general council members calling?
No, I'm not. Thankfully, I'm no longer.
So, Wendell. You're coming through.
I am no longer on the general council. Thankfully, you understand?
I mean the whole internal election conundrum. I'm calling it conundrum. That Ferdy Ferreira and Robert Hunt and stuff like that would have commented on with regard to the transition of power. I know that's an issue.
It is a big issue.
But of course, if it worked out, everybody would be singing his praises. People don't like losers. People don't like when they lose. So when they win, they give you all the praises. But if they lose, they forget all the good you do, you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to hell in a basket, whatever they call it. Anyway, let me continue and before I get buff again. So rage against Rowley. So after massive election loss, PNM General Counsel to call for former PM's resignation today. That's the front page. And on the back page, victory for Labour. KSR and Elder celebrate Point Fortin and LeBray. I mean, we should try and get on to Ansel Roger or Ozzy Warwick at least. With regard to, what's going on. Thriller into Ruba.
This morning.
Thriller into Ruba. Titans edge Rainforest Rangers intense finish. And Pumol and Anderson heading to court to challenge ball tampering charges. And Emirates calls on top order batters to put their hands up. Launch pad lacking. Front and back page of the Express. You always have it on the Express now to get sports because they've come up with the brilliant idea of putting news on the back page. Anyway, on Newsday, front page, U.S. Secretary of State hails new Prime Minister. Kamala, a strong leader, so says Marco Rubio. And there's a picture of Kamala Persad-Bissessar looking very satisfied and looking very, regal in a sort of way, waving to the crowd. EBC, 54% voter turnout. And on the back page, Titans leave Rangers winless. Ghana lose 3 straight in T20 breakout league. And Anissa leads TT into women's T20 blaze. So that's it for our 3 dailies this morning. So now you know what the main headlines are on the 3 daily newspapers in Trinidad and Tobago this morning. Of course, you can see the ticker tape rolling on underneath the stream. And you can see the number there. Of course, like and subscribe to the channel. You know we're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. And after that, who knows where we go. But that's our goal at this point. So you can call or WhatsApp us now at 281-1315. We didn't take much calls yesterday because we were chock full of people discussing the post-election results. So we can take some, we're going to make up for that today.
Yeah. You know who was very good?
Let me finish. Give me numbers, please. Have some discipline. So 281-1315, 281-1315. You can direct call us or WhatsApp us. Go ahead, Wendell.
Okay, Richard Raguba saying Richard. You do me a Richard's there. Anyway, you know what was interesting last night? TV6 had is Indira Rampasad, I think the lady name. She was quite good last evening, I thought, in terms of pointing out the reasons why the electorate, the reason why the elections happened the way it happened, and the reason why the PNM would have lost and so on, in terms of what was affecting the citizenry and how they dealt with it, and also the campaign that the UNC run. I thought she was very good, so that issue of that salary raise, we spoke about it, you understand? That was one of the main issues that affected people. And of course, the promises that the UNC made, and they made them again the night of the election victory. So a lot of people, I guess, waiting to see what happens.
We have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Yeah. Caller, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Richard, what you said there was very important, and it resounded with me, especially when you said you spoke to, I believe it's Foster Cummins, the guy who represents your area, who promised that the flyover was top of the agenda. What was his name again?
He didn't represent the area, but it's Foster Cummins we were speaking about.
Yeah, the problem would have been solved. He didn't.
No, here's the problem. That is PNM strategy right through. I've always said that. I said that on this program 1,050,000 times. Promises that never materializes. Right?
Well, no. Hold on.
More than for your mind.
No, but you see, I can't get you to spread misinformation because it is not up. It is not up to Foster Cummins. That is a Ministry of Works.
I am speaking about the PNM. I'm not talking about Foster Cummins. Foster Cummins is a representative of the PNM. I'm not talking about Foster Cummins. Foster Cummins can't build no highway.
Well, exactly.
You always trying to spin to defend the
Lincoln, you're going good, but don't insult me. I'm not a sycophant. Don't call me that.
I am not talking about Foster Cummins.
You just called me a sycophant, didn't you? Didn't you just say all the sycophants?
The mental gymnastics all they do to defend the PNM.
Yeah, but don't insult me. You can talk, but don't insult me.
Let's move on.
All right then.
Yeah. So your point.
It takes me back to my stance that I made right here on this program, and I wonder if anybody could dig deep in the archives and say, you know what, you were absolutely right. When I said I am not paying any property tax until they impose the property tax on commercial properties. I always found that property tax should be implemented on the millionaires first, on the people with mega properties before they reach the small man. Here now, I wonder if anybody has assessed that we're in a situation now where the government changed and the PNM no longer has the authority to impose property tax on the commercial property that they said they were going to do, the promises that never materialized. I'm tying it back in here, Wendell. We're going to do it, and promise, and you lost the election now, and now you can't do it. I'm wondering now, now that the opposition party policy is that axe the tax. So one out of three things might happen here now. They're now going to, based on the policy they was campaigning on, they cannot implement the property tax on commercial properties. So it might remain as it is, that the residential people alone continue paying taxes, and the billionaires and the people who are the West Mall and the Gulf City Mall and these people with $1 million properties will never pay taxes. We don't know if they will do the honorable thing and ask the tax on the residential properties, which I am talking to people and they say, well, they might do it for the first year, but after that, tax coming back. And they may never implement it on the commercial properties.
All right. Okay. No problem.
All right. And well, two things I wanted to correct. One thing Wendell cannot be accused of is being a sycophant, because he's one that criticizes the PNM often when he thinks they should be criticized and suffers for it. Plenty of them don't talk to him. And secondly, Foster Cummins, I can't remember Foster Cummins, just to correct the record, I can't remember Foster Cummins when we spoke to him in 2020 ever saying that he was going to build a flyover. He just said that the problem would be solved in a kind of generic way. If I remember correctly, that's what he said. I can't see that he said the flyover was going to be accomplished. He recognized that it was a problem, and it still is a problem, in that Tumpuna Road traffic jam heading to the Church of Roosevelt Highway, and to cross over into Larketta and all of those areas. You have lots of residential areas across that southern part of the Church of Roosevelt now. So he never, I can't remember him ever saying he was going to be a flyover, but he did say that he was going to solve the problem, which was not solved.
All right.
So
Kola, good morning.
How are you today?
We are good. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Wendell. Good morning, Richard.
Miss Davidi, how are you?
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yes. So, sometimes with I'm not bashing any caller, but sometimes Lincoln, just go overboard. Like it just get carried away. I mean, that's all I say. You could bash me if you want, it doesn't matter to me. So, the Express headline this morning, rage over Dr. Rowley. But Dr. Rowley resigned as the Prime Minister. He said he's giving up his position in political leader. So what it is General Counsel talking about, they go and call for his resignation. So they want to have an ex-bacchanal like in 2010 on Mr. Manning. That's what they really like. They still make headlines again. Dr. Rowley has been there for 45 years. You feel he doesn't know what he has to do? So why are you all just, some of all the PNM people, right, Wendell, some of them behaving like some word that starts with a J. That is so foolish. Dr. Rowley knows he has to do what he has to do. So
you could say the word jam it, the jam it is an allowed word. You could say jam it. Because some people need a mark for today.
I don't think that's what she wanted to say.
I hear her.
So, I don't play lotto and play, right? But those are 2 marks for those general council members who calling on Dr. Rowley to resign, as if he doesn't know. Duh, all you get a life now, elections done, you have to live with it. You congratulate the government that is in power now and make sure everything goes good for your own sake. I know I wish that I want them to do well. To tell you the truth, I want them to do well because I want the country to be good, because I want my daughter to remain in school, because I will have to put out too much money. You understand? So, please, all the PNM people, why all go and call the people to vote, as all of them lose 102,000. Be able to self, man. Good morning to everybody.
All right.
People are fine.
I just want to read a comment on the chat. I'll highlight it. Says it's from Vida Millard. Says, good morning, guys. I am so happy to have accidentally found you yesterday. I did not tune into 102.1 FM for a few in December 24th. Then you disappeared. I never thought I would miss you guys so much. Thank you very much for rejoining our show, Vida Millard.
Thank you very much, Vida Millard.
But we are not 102 on this thing. We are Net Radio, right? New Era TT Radio, right? That's our name.
Yep. Like and subscribe. Did I say like and subscribe? I'll say it one more time. Like and subscribe. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning, caller.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So this is the first. I'm a new caller.
Welcome.
Good morning. I'm a new caller, and this is the second time I'm watching this show.
Well, we welcome you. Thank you so much.
Miss Millard? Is this the person I just read the chat, Miss Millard?
No.
I beg your pardon?
Is this Miss Millard?
No.
Okay. All right.
This is a new caller. This is the second day I'm watching the show. Yesterday I looked at it on YouTube because I just wanted to feel what the ground was like. Mm-hmm. Now, this 102,000 votes that the PNM lost between 2020 and 2025, that is based on the fact that, remember when Dr. Rowley resigned, he gave his ministers a chance to vote who the next leader would be. And one of the ladies got 11, I'm talking about the senior ladies, either Penelope Beckles or Camille Robinson Regis, I don't know which one.
It's Penelope Beckles.
Penelope got 9, sorry,
yes,
and Stuart got 11, right?
That's
but the reason Stuart got 11 is that there is fear. There's a lot of fear from the fact that Dr. Rowley had basically anointed Stuart Young. But that is not the main reason why they lost. The people realized that the country wasn't going anywhere. A lot of wrong decisions were made. Stuart is not very well liked on the ground level because of how he does things. He's an arrogant bastard, right?
You're doing good, but don't lose it. All right.
Okay. He's arrogant. He's arrogant, but he is more arrogant than Dr. Rowley. Dr. Rowley had his way. Dr. Rowley had his way of getting things done and so on and so forth. And the mistake he made was not going to the General Council, right? Now, the difference between 58% and 54% in the general electorate is around 50,000. That's not a lot. That's not a lot. So people who blame it, well, it has a really low voter turnout. No. If you notice what happened with the UNC, and remember in 2020, the UNC just had 19 and PNM had 21. So PNM went from 21 to 13, right? And that is that is a lot of votes. That's eight sets of votes. But the two in Tobago is it totally went from PNM, and we know that was going to happen. The trend was showing that was going to happen in Tobago. But the six in Trinidad, out of the six in Trinidad that they lost back, remember the UNC in 2020 didn't lose them by a lot, except for a couple of them, right? Which went traditionally to the UNC, like the Point Fortin and the Labre constituencies. Right? So no more analysis needs to be done here. The people were bloody well fed up of the fact that the country was going nowhere. The economic situation, the purse was very, very tight. They are when they are disbursing funds, they do it very slowly, including the return of income tax to the general population, and things are very, very hard in Trinidad. The poverty level between 2020 and 2025, people increased dramatically in this country.
All right,
and the crime level went up a lot. Those are the reasons.
Caller, thank you very much. We have a lot of other callers online, but we really appreciate you.
Thanks a lot for that. I mean, I don't know how arrogant.
No, Stuart Young is very approachable, Richard.
I don't know how arrogant he is. That may be her perception, but I don't personally know how arrogant he is. I don't get that sense from him. I know Dr. Rowley can certainly handle himself because Dr. Rowley is not Patrick Manning.
No.
In terms of dealing with any aggression coming from any quarters, he can handle himself. So I mean, but that drop of nearly 100,000 votes to the PNM is something that people will have to analyze, and the PNM will have to analyze. And is that the result, as the last caller was inferring, was that as a result of the whole internal election fiasco? Because there was a sense that Stuart Young was anointed by Rowley. It was like a handing of the baton rather than a fully democratic process. That was the kind of sense you were getting, and which upset some of the members of the PNM in the General Council. And of course, Freddie Ferreira, of course, who has always been very frank about how he saw things. And always remember, Freddie Ferreira will always have an opinion when it comes to internal maneuverings of the PNM. And of course, I know Robert LaHunt was one who also made some comments on it. So I think that internal election fiasco and having a political leader and a prime minister coexisting at the same time was a little confusing, which came out yesterday, as Mariano said. It was confusing because when I was watching it on the night and Dr. Rowley was making the concession speech, I was like, why is he making the concession speech? Should it be Stuart? And so you were a little confused by the imagery, you know? We take one more call before we go to our morning poll.
Caller, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, Zena.
Well, I don't see any confusion about Dr. Rowley coming out to say that if he's a political leader, and both of them spoke. But let me tell you,
Dr. Rowley took the lead.
People have too much damn ambitions, and that is the problem. You understand? Everybody can't want to fight on the prime minister post. And you see this general council are telling you, if they play the food, if they play according to Wendell Hero and make any further disturbance, I personally not going to ever vote if God in my life, because they will be definitely playing the fool. People have to settle down and realize that this position where they're fighting down, that ain't cutting it, you know. Study why all your laws and study to put better PR people in place. After I talk about that for the PNM, the laws with PR. because they have people continually putting ads on the media and all that, which are lies. They should have come out and take it to TAT or whoever and have them take those false ads. I don't mind people promising you the moon and the stars. They could promise you what they want, but you see, when you're lying, don't put no lies up in front of my face. And I think a lot of people got damn vexed for that. And let me tell you, a real true PNM is a true PNM. So you ain't going taking because, well, you're like this or you're like that, you ain't go vote for this. That is trivial matters. If you believe in a party and you know that is an institution, you will stick with it. You understand? And race and money have a lot to play in this. Race and money.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much. Zeno?
Well, I don't know. I mean, for the UNC to have won by the margin they did, it would have crossed racial lines.
Yeah.
It would have crossed
and we saw it, eh? For them to...
So I don't think race played as much a part in their win as obviously promises. Because a lot of the 10 years that the PNM has been there, austerity has been kind of the undertone of the messaging with regard to the economy. It never really got better. At times you got glimpses. I know Con Ember, Minister of Finance, would have said some things positively, oh, the economy is growing, whatever, but there was always this undertone of austerity. And it's something I have brought up repeatedly. You can't just have austerity for 10 years. Your responsibility when you put up and say, I want this position, vote us in, is to deal with that. That's your responsibility, to grow the GDP, to diversify the economy, to be the facilitator of economic growth. And if you're not doing that, you could suffer the consequences of a loss.
Well, time will tell how the UNC in terms of what they have promised.
Very late for morning poll. What was the poll this morning?
Term limits, fixed election date.
Well, that's a possible poll, but you could also
because you want to poll what's going to happen at General Council today?
Yeah, because yeah, that's more, you know.
Well, let me do that.
How would you phrase it though?
They're calling for Seo Cheong can't resign. He was prime minister. He no longer holds that position. He is just a member of parliament as of today. Right? So there's nothing for him to resign from, step down from. Dr. Rowley is the person holding still the position of political leader. So, and he did indicate he was going to leave, but let's go down the road of the article. Should Dr. Rowley resign prior to today's General Council? Right?
Yeah.
Because the General Council apparently will be asking for his resignation today. Based on this article, we don't know. Right? So should Dr. Rowley resign as political leader of the People's National Movement? That's the question, right? Because remember the political leader, remember the opposition leader comes from amongst the members of parliament who are there. The opposition leader gets to select the 6 senators who will sit on the government side. So that now all 13 are qualified at the end of the day as opposition leader. The decks are clear, everybody at the same level today as to who could possibly be appointed opposition leader, right?
So should Dr. Rowley resign as political leader of the PNM, and of course we mean more sooner rather than later, because of course the General Council is calling for it according to the media reports today. So that's our poll this morning. We'll take a minute of voting before we go to 7 o'clock news, and then we'll take some more voting after the 7 o'clock news. Right. So start voting.
All right, Mrs. R says no. Alistair Hart says yes. Steph says yes. I'm shouting it. Boy Bidesi, yes. DL says yes. Julia Esbati says yes. Hillbenj, okay, he didn't vote. Susan Jessup says yes. RSRR Production says yes.
RSRR Production should not be voting on anything.
Rena Purujanis says no. Beauty Culture did not vote. Donna Ramlochan did not vote. Sherwin Kerr says yes. Iftikhar Hussain says he didn't vote. Trinidad Margot says yes. Far Rockaway says yes since last year. Carol Guevara says yes.
We have a caller there. Caller, good morning. What do you say?
Hell no. The one more disturbance to put the PNM father down. The father broke up down the road. Listen,
Okay.
let them no cause no confusion.
Zena says no. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Fully noted.
Yeah.
Keith Watkins says yes. Iftika says no. Beauty Culture says yes. Lester Cragwell said we should have seen it back. So I guess that's a yes. Champion of Democracy says no. Remember when everybody was saying leave Kamala Day, but PNM will always win?
Yeah, imagine that. I think I heard you say that too.
I mean, to be fair to Kamala Persad, she pulled it off.
She did.
All of the criticisms that has been directed at her, including her frailty and whatever else people would have suggested, she pulled it off.
Richard, she did once again with a coalition of interests. That is what made the difference, you know. You see what happened in 2014 and Library, Richard?
Yeah, the coalition.
Hold on 1 minute there, guys. Ms. Sampson.
Good morning, gentlemen. Why? Is this the norm?
No, is it yes or no? Which one?
No.
All right, no.
All
Kevin
right.
Rodriguez says yes. Ron DeSantis Jr. says yes. Ambrose Blas says no. Okay, so just other comments. Yes, DL. They had said leave Kamala right there. PNM will always win. Even Basdio Pandit said it. Look what happened. Cut he hot.
All right, so do we have any calls pending, or can I go to the 7 o'clock news? Can we go to the 7 o'clock news?
Go to the news, and then I'll give you what's on the WhatsApp when you come back.
All right, so you can continue to vote on the poll, and we'll take some votes after the 7 o'clock news. We'll take a little bit more votes, and we'll take it from there. And then, of course, we'll get into our guests in the next hour. We're speaking to Marvin Gonzalez, the winner for the PNM for the Aruca Lopino seat and former Minister of Public Utilities and Minister of National Security, although briefly. So we'll be speaking to Mr. Gonzalez, and then, of course, a little later on, we'll be speaking to Dr. Marlene Attzs, economist, about what is going on with Trinidad and Tobago's economy as governance has changed. Well, news is up next.
The news you need, the clarity you deserve. Local, regional, global. This is Net Radio News Now.
Good morning. This is Amanda Mitchell with the news on New Era TT Radio for Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. Trinidad and Tobago has experienced a political earthquake following Monday's general election, with a new preliminary configuration of 27 to 12 to 2 in the 13th Parliament. The United National Congress, led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar, has secured 27 seats, giving them a constitutional majority similar to their 2010 victory. The People's National Movement holds 12 seats, while the Tobago People's Party has captured 2 seats. Prime Minister-elect Persad-Bissessar, who made history as the country's first female prime minister in 2010, returns for a second term after a 10-year hiatus. During her victory speech in Chaguanas, she declared, "When God says yes, nobody can say no," and emphasized that now that the UNC has won, everybody wins. Persad-Bissessar promised that from day one, her administration will focus on delivering on its campaign pledges, stating, "After years we spent listening to you, your wants, your needs, your hopes, and your desires, it is now that the real work starts." In a stunning development, the Tobago People's Party has unseated PNM incumbents in both Tobago East and West constituencies, marking the end of the PNM's 25-year hold on the island's parliamentary representation. In Tobago East, TPP candidate David Thomas received 4,473 votes to defeat Ayanna Webster Roy, who garnered 2,858 votes. The race in Tobago West was considerably tighter, with TPP's Joel Sampson securing victory by just 16 votes, receiving 4,951 votes to Shamfa Kudjo Lewis's 4,935. TPP Chairman Anne Natasha II thanked Tobago for its confidence in the party, stating they were not surprised by the victory, despite being a relatively new political entity. The United National Congress has triggered recounts in 3 constituencies: San Fernando East, Malabar, Mausica, and Aruca, Lopino. According to the Elections and Boundaries Commission, the recounts began at 3 p.m. yesterday. Only after these recounts are completed will the EBC release its preliminary results, including the final allocation of seats and overall voter turnout figures. Stuart Young's tenure as Prime Minister now goes down in history as the shortest in the country's history, having lasted just over 1 month. The PNM's message of a bold new chapter failed to capture the electorate's imagination, while the UNC's campaign promises appeared to resonate strongly with voters. Internationally, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has congratulated Prime Minister-elect Kamla Persad-Bissessar, describing her as a strong leader, friend, and U.S. ally who shares President Trump's priorities on security and immigration. In an official statement, Rubio commended the people of Trinidad and Tobago for their commitment to democratic values and institutions, demonstrated through the peaceful conduct of free and fair elections. The statement highlighted the strong partnership between the United States and Trinidad and Tobago, expressing eagerness to work with Persad-Bissessar's administration on energy security, economic prosperity, and countering transnational crime. Meanwhile, the new administration already faces calls to fulfill its campaign promises. Acting ASP Gideon Dixon, president of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social Welfare Association, has urged the incoming UNC government to honor its pledge of a wage increase for public sector workers. Dixon emphasized that salary negotiations remain a top priority, referencing a previous UNC statement that negotiations would begin at no less than 10%. While then Finance Minister Vishnu Dhanpal had warned such increases could destabilize the economy, Dixon stressed the importance of engagement on the matter and extended thanks to outgoing National Security Minister Marvin Gonzales and Prime Minister Stuart Young. You are listening to news on New Era TT Radio. In international news, China has released a provocative video calling on the global community to stand against what it describes as President Donald Trump's bully leadership amid escalating trade tensions. The English-narrated video, posted by China's Foreign Ministry on social media, declares that bowing to a bully is like drinking poison to quench thirst. It only deepens the crisis. The message portrays the United States as an economic aggressor, claiming American policies forced companies like Toshiba and Alstom into financial crisis and sent Japan's economy into decades of anemic growth. By contrast, China positions itself as a free trade haven. The dramatic video concludes with a call for nations to stand tall and break through the walls of hegemony, signaling Beijing's unwillingness to back down in the intensifying trade war with the Trump administration. That concludes our midweek news update. I'm Amanda Mitchell for New Era TT Radio. Stay tuned for The Breakfast Show with Wendell, Richard and Sir Charles coming up right after these messages.
That was news now. Stay informed with New Era TT Radio. Net Radio.
So, we're just taking a break. This is the perfect mix to keep you engaged, informed, and entertained. The Mid-Morning Mix and Mingle, weekdays, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
People often think about wellness in terms of physical health, nutrition, exercise, weight management, etc. But it is much more. Wellness is a holistic integration of physical, social, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, financial, occupational, and environmental state. Join our host, Terry Ann George, a health coach, author, mediator, and CEO of the Institute of Health and Fitness, as she discusses 8 elements with several professionals within the various dimensions of wellness. So let's kick burnout to the curb for good.
Join Terry and George for Dimensions. Fridays at 11 a.m. on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio.
Wake up with the Net Radio Breakfast Show. Rise and shine with Michael Stevens and Richard Raghubarsi, weekdays from 6 o'clock to 9 a.m. Start your day feeling good, energized, and informed as we tackle the biggest issues of the day, get you where you need to be on time, and keep you in the know about everything that matters. We bring you insightful discussions, expert analysis, and the latest updates so you're always ahead of the curve. Mornings matter. Your voice matters. And it all starts right here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio. The Net Radio Breakfast Show, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Wake up informed and stay ahead.
No people come to Jamaica and no know how we live things. Say everything nice, true, we full of vibes and things. Them same one feel it to them heart when them get you understand the real thing. Yeah, me day at home one day, up with a white man we come all the way from Norway, and him turn to me and say, how comes Jamaica full of so much screw face? Same time I lift me head to the sky, and a teardrop fall from me high. Me say, man, you come and go out for a drive. Let me show you why me cry. Look on the gully side. Do you see anything to smile about? Look at that hungry child, yeah. Do you see anything to smile about? Look at the schools where you them love to get them education. Do you see anything to smile about? Look at the conditions of our police stations. Do you see anything to smile about? No. Same time the brother say, how can the nation be living this way? And the next thing him say, how can the government play so many games? Same time my heart fall to the ground, cause there's much more where that comes from. Certain place they are worse than slum. Youth man come and take a look on Riverton. Do you see anything to smile about? Look on Pienland. Yeah. Do you see anything to smile about? Blancas, Mobile and Cyprus Heights in Spain. Do you see anything to smile about? What blacks can't tie a mutton, they're all the same. Do you see anything to smile about? No, no.
All right, everybody, so 13 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock as we inside our number 2 right here on New Era TT Radio, Net Radio, on this beautiful midweek Wednesday morning. We're glad to be here with you. And of course, coming up, we have our weather.
Good morning again, Trinidad and Tobago. This is your weather update for Wednesday, the 30th of April, 2025. Today will be hazy and at times breezy despite the isolated shower. Be aware that a significant concentration of Saharan dust is expected overnight. Sensitive persons should take the necessary precautions to protect their health. For today, Trinidad can expect a maximum temperature of 33 degrees Celsius and a minimum of 25 degrees Celsius. In Tobago, the maximum temperature will reach 32 degrees Celsius with a minimum of 27 degrees Celsius. The heat index will make it feel like 37 degrees Celsius in Trinidad and 36 degrees Celsius in Tobago, so please stay hydrated throughout the day. Looking at sea conditions, waters remain moderate with wave heights of 1.5 to 2 meters in open waters and below 1 meter in sheltered areas. Yesterday, there was no recorded rainfall at both Piarco and Crown Point. The monthly cumulative rainfall stands at 62 millimeters for Piarco and 46.3 millimeters for Crown Point. The sun rose this morning at 5:48 and will set at 6:18 this evening. For those planning maritime activities today, high tides in Port of Spain will occur at 5:21 this morning and 6:45 this evening, with low tide at 12:10 in the afternoon. In Scarborough, high tides will be at 4:57 this morning and 6:15 this evening, with low tides at 11:48 this morning and 11:42 tonight. This has been your weather update for today. Stay cool, keep safe, and remember to take precautions against the Saharan dust. From all of us at New Era TT Radio, have a wonderful Wednesday.
RSRR Productions has done it again. Married and Mischievous was a riot at Sapa. Now we head to Cipriani College for 2 nights only. On Saturday the 3rd of May at 8:30 p.m. and Sunday the 4th at 6:30 p.m. Tickets available now at usual outlets and from Wednesday the 30th of April at Cipriani College box office. This play is strictly for adults. Married and Mischievous is an experience you'll never forget. S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rum Box. Drinking out of the box.
Advertise with us on New Era TT Radio, the fastest growing streaming platform for talk in Trinidad and Tobago. Audio and video ads welcome. Elevate your brand with us. Connect with us at newerattradio@yahoo.com or call us at 299-5156. Now what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Of course, we are back on the breakfast show this morning. And of course, we were going to take like a minute of voting. Well, take whatever votes you all have recorded for people who voted during the news. If you can tell us, Charles and Wendell, your camera's off.
Yeah, I know. I was having an Ovaltine biscuit.
All right. So I have Afia saying yes. Trinijam is saying yes. Black Pearl is saying yes. I have Pauline is saying yes. Annan is saying yes. And
is Annan being sworn in today?
You can ask.
He must be stuck up laughing whenever I say that.
Well, you know, yeah. And that's it for now, Richard.
Any other
I
votes?
have Nicholas. Yes, I have Nicholas Link saying yes. Andre says, good morning to the breakfast crew. Didn't realize you all were back on here. Yes, thank you, Andre. Marcia Rock says yes. Ingrid from Tucson says yes. Steph, okay. They're talking about Amanda here. Amanda in yellow. Okay, where are the other votes? So they vote or they just bacchanal on the thing with Mrs. Aaron, Steph? Donna Ramlo-chan, please add Amanda to your panel. Amanda is doing a very good job doing the news and so on. And Donna, you'll be happy to see she's dressed in yellow today. No, the Chief Justice does not change either, MS. Colted Finch says yes. Who else? Any other votes? No, that's it.
All right, so we had 33. Our poll this morning was... maybe I could pull it back up. Our morning poll this morning was, do you think, should Dr. Rowley resign as political leader of the PNM? Because, of course, that connected to some of the media reports that there were people calling from him from the PNM and at the General Council, well, soon to be called General Council meeting, him to resign as political leader. So we asked our listeners and viewers what they thought. 33 people voted in the allotted time. Of the 33 people, 26 of you said yes, and 7 of you said no.
All
33 of you said yes. I'm sorry, 26 of you said yes, 7 of you said no. So that's the results for our morning poll this morning. Of course, we have our guest coming up, Marvin Gonzalez. He'll be joining us shortly. He is here already backstage. So he'll be joining us in terms of discussing, what are you laughing at, Wendell?
Read the chat.
I can't read the chat. I'm busy.
Oh, you can't?
All right.
Donna Ramlo-chan asks, is Donna Ramlo-chan? Where's Steve Khan? And Stephanie say Steve Khan is walking princess.
So Marvin Gonzalez will join us shortly when I see him.
I thought you were taking a couple more calls.
But he is already there, and I'll have to give way to our guest.
Well, let's go. A potential opposition leader after today. Let's talk to him, man.
He has been moving fast.
Hey.
You see how he sit down there already? He looking almost like he in the opposition leader chair already. What's that?
Marvin
Gonzalez. One of my favorite MPs. How are you doing?
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. And thank you for an opportunity. It's my first interview after the general elections.
Well, we
feel honored. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us this morning.
You. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Would you want to weigh on the poll itself? It's question. Sorry to put you in that kind of position, but you could say no, you don't want to weigh in if you don't want to. But of course there are media reports in the papers today saying that people are upset. Well, emotions run high in terms of elections, and that at a proposed general council meeting they're going to call for the resignation of Dr. Rowley as political leader with immediate effect. That's what the media reports are suggesting. Do you have an opinion on that, or you prefer not to weigh in on it?
Well, there is a special general council meeting that was called today. It is scheduled for 4 p.m. There is no agenda that was circulated to general council members, but I'm assuming that having regard to the fact that the PNM has just lost the general elections, the matters regarding the appointment of an opposition leader and the future leadership of the party, those matters will be ventilated at the general council. I think it is just natural. We operate by the Westminster model of democracy, where after the holding of a general election, the political leader of the party that loses the general election traditionally will offer his resignation to the party. So I honestly would expect that it doesn't happen always, but we'll see what happens. But when the PNM lost the elections in 2010, I think the then Prime Minister Manning was asked to tender his resignation by General Council. I was told, it was reported that he did offer his resignation, but the General Council did not accept the terms under which he offered his resignation. But the reality was that he was asked to tender his resignation, and eventually he did tender his resignation. So most times, especially a party that is in government, that lost the general election, it is expected that traditionally the leader of the party would tender his resignation to the General Council, and the General Council will have an opportunity to decide whether or not they would ask the political leader to continue to lead until such time a leader is appointed. So these things are, you have conventions for them, and the PNM is a well-established political organization, 70 years old, and you would expect these conventions to continue.
Well, I was gonna point out in addition to what you're saying, Mr. Gonzalez, that at the point in time when Mr. Manning lost the 2010 election, he was still a member of council. He had won his seat in San Fernando East.
A member of parliament.
That does not hold for Dr. Rowley, who is not a member of parliament at this point in time, because he sat out of the elections. So how would that permutation work? Because selecting an opposition leader means the opposition leader also will get to select the 6 senators.
Yes.
So it's important to move past the issue of political leader at this point in time and get to an opposition leader, where the 13 members of parliament will have to choose amongst themselves who's best suited to carry out that role.
Correct.
Is that something that the General Council is also considering today?
Well, the General Council obviously would have to take that into consideration. Now, the Constitution does not take into consideration a member of the House that leads the political party that is opposed to the government. The Constitution, from my recollection, it stipulates that the leader of the opposition shall be appointed among the members of the House who do not support the government. So that member of parliament, once he commands the support of the majority of members who are opposed to the government, that member will be appointed the leader of the opposition and not necessarily the member of the House that leads the political party.
That's correct. That's also correct.
Yeah.
Because as it stands now, we can't go that way, because the political leader of the party is not a member of parliament.
He's not a member of parliament.
Go that way.
So it has to be among the 13 PNM members, out of the 13 PNM members who obviously are opposed to the government. So that member, once he commands the support of the majority of the 13 members or so, will be appointed by the president to be leader of the opposition.
So have you been lobbied, or have you lobbied anyone since? Because I know how this thing works. I was around in 2010, and I was part of that lobbying process. You understand? So,
I don't think the lobbying process has started as yet.
Oh,
this is for leader of the opposition. I mean, for people on the ground in terms of regular Trinidadians and Tobagonians who are not part of the PNM or not part of the internal workings of the PNM. For a lot of them, they are a little confused, I think, because they're saying, well, Stuart Young was appointed as the prime minister. Isn't he logically going to be the leader of opposition in terms of the transitioning of the PNM into the opposition ranks? So he was the presumptive leader, but he was the selected leader by the caucus within the parliamentary corridors
to be prime minister.
Well, he was the selected prime minister.
Yes.
By that group.
By that group. Correct.
So it's that same group basically that has the vote in the leader of the opposition.
It's a different group.
Well, it's the same group, just smaller. Some new members.
With new members, correct.
Yeah, we have some new members.
Correct. So,
but Dr. Raleigh is still a political leader, so I don't know how much sway Dr. Raleigh would have in saying, well, this is who I prefer, because that's the sense you get from Dr. Raleigh. He lets his opinion be known. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the sense you get.
Well, Dr. Raleigh is a political leader, and of course, at the General Council, if the matter is discussed, and I assume that the matter will be discussed, Dr. Raleigh, as the political leader, would now advocate his position or lay out his position at the General Council to perhaps sway the General Council to go in one direction or the other. And the General Council obviously will decide whether or not they agree with him. And coming out of the discussion, the members of Parliament, the 13 members of Parliament, will constitutionally exercise their discretion as to who they will support as leader of the opposition, taking into consideration the matters that have been discussed at the General Council.
Yeah, but beyond all of that, there is always a power play at play. In terms of people lobbying, as Wendell suggested. And Dr. Rowley comes to the meeting, the General Council meeting, a little weakened because of the loss. Anytime you lose, you're weakened as a political leader.
Correct.
So he comes to the process weakened. People are maybe less intimidated by him because of the loss.
That's reality.
So there is going to be, I assume, some very
strong emotions,
animated discussions.
High emotions, and people who are very disappointed and trying to recover from the loss, and perhaps will blame the leadership of the party for the loss. So these things will all be playing in the pot, and the direction which we go we'll see how the outcome goes. But you're absolutely right.
But strange enough, gentlemen, too, this is also in the mix, that the General Secretary, who holds a very important position in the party, lost his seat at the election. So he's not a member of Parliament either.
Correct.
And that also has to be put into that mix in terms of how they manage a General Council today. Because
he's still the general. Was he the general manager or
general secretary?
He's still that.
Yes, he's still that.
But he also comes to the process weekend.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. He sits next to the chairman who would have just been prime minister, who lost an election. So it's going to be tense in Bali's House.
I expect it to be very tense, and I will appeal to all members of the General Council and the leadership of the party that despite the deep disappointment and the strong feelings that persons will have, the stability of the party is very important at this point in time, and how we conduct ourselves and at this point in time is very critical because the membership is looking on closely as to how this process is going to unfold. So it's okay and it's all human to have very strong feelings and the disappointments and the accusation and the blame game and what have you. But at the end of the day, the PNM is in opposition, and the role of the opposition is very, very important in our constitutional democracy with respect to holding the government to account. And therefore, this process, as difficult as it is, must be managed carefully to ensure that the PNM discharges its duty, its constitutional duty as the parliamentary opposition. So we have to be very careful in how this thing is managed.
Marvin, I wanted to discuss the issue of the 100,000 roughly less votes the PNM got in this election. That has to be concerning to the strategists of the PNM in terms of working out what went wrong, because something went wrong.
Yeah.
Polls and analysts were suggesting that it was going to be very close, neck and neck election. That's statistically a dead heat, but that's not what happened. It was basically a blowout in terms of the PNM's defeat, and a loss of 100,000 votes for the People's National Movement between 2020 and 2025 is astonishing. And I don't know if you have an opinion of why that would have happened. What went wrong in terms of voters being apathetic or alienated to voting for the PNM?
Let me start by saying this. I have never been in the leadership of the PNM. I came in as a member of parliament and I served as a minister of government. But of course, I have been making my own observations. If you go back to 2015, gentlemen, and you look at the amount of votes, I don't have the exact figures before me, but I will still make the point. The amount of votes that the PNM captured in 2015, there was a local government election thereafter, all right? And no, let's go back to 2013. So 2013, the PNM had internal elections, and Dr. Rowley and the PNM leadership, they amassed thousands of votes to assume their positions as leaders in the party. Then in 2015, there was a general election. The PNM amassed thousands of votes. But after that, there were several internal elections, local government elections, THA elections, and all of these elections, when you look at the numbers, you saw a continual decline, a gradual decline of votes that the party was gathering at the national level, at the local government level, at the THA level, as well as internal elections. And that, to me, sent a very clear signal to the PNM. It should have sent a very clear signal to the strategists and the managers of the party that something needs to be done before preparing the party for a 2025 very important general elections, to ensure that that continuous decline of votes that they've been getting at the various levels does not in any way repeat itself in the 2025 general elections. And I don't think that the party took serious note of what was taking place, and therefore it manifested itself in a massive decline of votes in the 2025 election. But that decline of votes have been taking place since the party assumed governance in 2015, and nothing was done to respond.
So let me ask a follow-up question. What do you think accounted for that? Because there is a strong opinion that the PNM, because of their style, manages the country as a whole. In other words, their decisions are based on what may be best for the country. But at the end of the day, the people at the ground, who are your supporters really, are not feeling the effects of that. Is that one of the reasons why?
It is the main reason for that. The PNM has not been, in my view, good at its messaging and the way in which it has gone out into the communities to connect with the people. I mean, when I served as Minister of Public Utilities, one of the things I did was to go out into the communities to where we would have done a number of projects. And going out into those communities, we held meetings at community centers, you meet the people on the streets and what have you. And I picked up there that there was a genuine thirst by several sectors in the communities all over Trinidad and Tobago to have that connection with central government. So when I went out there, and interacting and interfacing with ordinary men and ordinary women, I detected that the PNM as an institution should be doing exactly that, so that people can understand and feel connected with the decisions that the government, the central government, is making, so that that apathy that we are referring to, in my view, had we maintained that connection at that level, it would not have manifested itself in 100,000 people not coming out to support the party. So I think that is a very serious issue, gentlemen. There is not one reason for it. There are several reasons for it. And the party needs to go back to basics. I had mentioned to the former Prime Minister, Stuart Young, that when he was appointed Prime Minister, that if we were to be successful in this general elections, one of the things that the party should do from day one is to do exactly what I was just saying, going back out into the communities and reconnecting, because I felt as though there was a void between the ordinary man and the ordinary woman in ordinary communities with the decisions of central government.
Well, I know the PNM would have had Wendell, but the PNM would have had an uphill battle because you were incumbents for 10 years. You have 10 years being in the position, you always, and this is globally in democracy, you are coming at a disadvantage. Generally, a lot of the electorate wants a change at that point, unless you're really, a fantastic government. And so that incumbency was something that had to be tackled. And I think the strategists in the PNM attempted to tackle it by phrasing it a new chapter, changing the prime ministership to try and rebrand the party as something new going forward post 10 years, because you needed to do something because they recognized it was a weak point.
True.
Obviously, it didn't work. The new chapter messaging did not work. And also you had a lot of dissatisfaction with some of the decisions that the PNM would have made, and I think a lot of it I think a lot of it was, they always say all politics is eventually local.
True.
And I think it's how people felt in terms of their lives and the quality of lives in their respective homes across Trinidad and Tobago that made them apathetic.
Correct.
Disinterested that the politics can substantially improve their lives. The constant undertone of the last 10 years of the PNM's reign was austerity, austerity, austerity. That was an undertone.
That's
consistently
correct.
For that 10 years.
Absolutely.
And as I told Wendell,
absolutely, you're absolutely right.
And that doesn't resonate well with people, because when you put yourself up for elections and when people elect you, they expect you
to improve their lives.
That's to be the facilitator of economic growth, the facilitator of GDP growth, the facilitator of diversification of the economy, which we're hearing since we're in primary school, and all of those other things. They expect you, whoever you are that is elected, to do the job of governance, which includes that, and I'm not even hitting yet the safety and security issue, which was also a number one concern for a lot of citizens across the country. I think a lot of that affected the PNM.
You're absolutely right. Now, if you look again at the challenges of the government, the PNM since 2015, with declining revenues and its ability to deliver goods and services to improve the lives of the people over the last 10 years, the government, the PNM as a party struggled because, of course, we are heavily dependent on our energy reserves, oil and gas, and everything is primarily based, or most things are primarily based on the revenues that we derive from oil and gas. And the government, or the party, was not getting the amount of resources that it required to really bring about the level of impact and the improvement that you've just referred to at the basic level to the communities and to the citizens, because it was constrained by revenues and expenditure. Now, despite the fact despite the fact that we've had depressed revenues coming out of the oil and gas sector, the government maintained a social safety net of over $5 billion under the Ministry of Social Development. But again, maintaining that at $5 billion, you still had so many people saying that they are not feeling the impact that they expect to have at their lives and in their communities, despite the expenditure of $5 billion in subsidies and grants at various levels and what have you. So it is a very difficult situation, and the government could only do what it can possibly do based on the revenues that are available to it. The whole international economic order is being challenged because of COVID, and then you had the post COVID economy with challenges all over, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but all over. Your government has been hamstrung by all of these international headwinds, and then you had the incoming Donald Trump administration with the trade wars and what have you. And then the challenge in hammering the deal with Venezuela with the dragon gas and all of these things, which the government was pursuing to grow the revenue situation so that we can respond to some of the issues that you're referring to, increasing salaries for public servants, increasing minimum wage, and all of these things that would normally impact people at the individual level. The government was hamstrung in dealing with rising food prices, and so I mean the government cannot control food prices. These things are dictated by international circumstances, and all consumers, all citizens have been grappling with rising food prices, inflation, and what have you, our salaries remaining stagnant. So people actually felt as though their standard of living was not improving. As a matter of fact, it's being reversed, and the government and the party not being able to respond to it because it simply did not have the revenues available to it.
So my question, Mr. Gonzalez, is why then call that election as early? Why not wait until the time is due to call an election where you can at least articulate these things that you are articulating today? Now, they were articulated by Dr. Robbie in some manner, but of course, we are very piss poor at communications and especially social media. We are terrible at it. We have always been, right?
Correct.
But why call an election in a circumstance like that? Why not wait and see?
Well, the strategists and the leaders of the party and those who are responsible for calling the elections believed, based on whatever data that was available to them, that calling the elections at this point in time would have given the PNM the advantage of securing a third term. Obviously, that did not work. And they will have
none of these people were wrong in 2010. I was wrong,
Well,
clearly they were not wrong to know the mood of the people.
Correct. So they will now have to account to the General Council, because it is they who call the elections. They be banking on the data that were available to them, that suggested to them that the PNM stood a very good chance of securing a third term. They would now have to take responsibility, and that is what I was referring to earlier on. They would now have to take responsibility for the outcome of the elections and perhaps do what you would expect persons to do in scenarios like this.
Yeah. But you don't have to respond to this. But let me say this, Richard. You don't have to respond to this, Mr. Gonzalez.
Sure.
But the information I have, the seats we lost in Tunapuna, Toko, Sangre Grande, St. Joseph, and there was one other one, San Fernando West. The information I had is that they were told that we are going to lose these seats because of the candidates that they're putting back there. That's the information I have. And we still went and put them back there. And guess what? We lost the seats.
Well. Let us put aside that point for a while, Wendell. I mean, the fact that you've lost 100,000 votes across the board, that jeopardized all members of parliament that represented the PNM. I
ain't talking about that, I'm talking about the polling, the information beforehand, before these people were selected.
But Wendell,
I think it's a bigger problem than that. I think that's what Marvin is saying. It's a bigger problem than those seats.
Yes, I mean, I have been I have tried my best to represent my constituency and to improve the lives of my constituents. All right, with the resources that have been made available to me. And a lot of progress, a lot of things were done in my constituency. And it was a struggle and a battle to hold on to my constituency. And I don't think that had anything to do with my representation. You understand?
What were the results in your area, by the way? We don't even know.
Well, I won the seat. I won, but I
know
won.
you won, but what were the actual vote counts? They've not put up anything like as yet.
Yeah, it was 7,400 or so. 7,400. And the UNC would have gotten 7,100 or something like that.
Oh, so it was close also.
It was very close, and the pattern was very similar, where in PNM constituencies, as well, you know, Richard was referring 100,000 votes. 100,000 of your supporters did not come out, and so you had an average of 2,000 to 3,000 votes that the PNM would normally get in those individual constituencies did not turn out. So in Arima, the Penny would have lost 2,000 votes. Dabadi, Omero, Mausika, Dabadi is about 2,000, 3,000 votes didn't come out. In Toko Sangre Grande, this is the same margin. In my constituency, we've lost 2,000 votes. I mean, luckily, even though I lost 2,000 votes, I was still able to hold on to the seat. The same thing for Tunapuna, St. Joseph, and San Fernando West. So in my view, I don't think it had anything to do with the quality of the candidates, but the fact that your base did not come out and vote, and had they come out and vote on election day, we would have retained those seats.
No, I'm not questioning anyone's quality here, because let's face it, Minister Dialsing did an excellent job. I thought Roger Monroe was in touch with his area.
Yes.
But remember, the people are dissatisfied, and I'm not talking about the businessmen and so on. I'm talking about the ground people. They are dissatisfied with what they've been able to get. You understand? And it clearly showed in this election. Because
it's all across the board. It's all across the board. But the 13 of us who were able to retain our seat, despite the disenchantment by 100,000 of our supporters, we've been lucky to hold on to our seats. But
Marvin, I mean, we are close to ending the interview because we have Dr. Marlene Attzs coming in to speak with us about the economic issues now facing Trinidad and Tobago, and those types of issues facing the new government.
Yes.
I just want to ask you one more question, and this is I always get a sense that you, as Minister of Public Utilities, you held it very dear to heart, and that you were really focused on solving the problems particularly of the water situation in Trinidad and Tobago. Do you think that enough is in place that the new government will be able to grow from where you left it and hopefully continue the projects, the IDB projects, etc., that are being financed, etc.?
I think enough has been is put in place. We have not only put projects in place, but there's a solid policy in place to advance the water sector. It is well documented. The projects are well advanced. The proposal to get the other tranche of the IDB loan has already been designed, and all our incoming Minister of Public Utilities has to do is really just continue with the program. And once he continues with the program, he doesn't have work to do. He doesn't have to craft a policy. He doesn't have to come up with a strategy to design projects and programs. All of these things are already in place. People are seeing an improvement all across the board. And all an incoming Minister of Public Utilities have to do is to give guidance and leadership to allow these projects and the programs to mature. And we will see an improvement, and we will continue to have improvements across the board. I am very confident. But if a minister comes in and change gear and decides to reverse those projects that have already been bearing fruit, then we will be going way back to where we were. And that would be quite
well, thank you so much, Marvin Gonzalez, for joining us this morning. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that general council later, but
I'm sure you will get it live. I'm sure.
I know I will.
You have a lot of friends in there that will tell you everything.
I know.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Marvin.
All right, bye-bye.
Of course, that was Marvin Gonzalez, former Minister and Member of Parliament, elected Member of Parliament Faruka Lupino. We now will be going to Dr. Marlene Attzs.
Richard, before you go to Dr. Marlene Attzs, I want to rebuke Champion of Democracy, Child of God. I rebuke that.
Yeah. So we will be going to Dr. Attzs. Yeah. We'll be going to Dr. Attzs, and when we'll just take a quick break as we move to our interview with Dr. Marlene Attzs, economist, and we're going to be discussing Trinidad and Tobago's economy that the UNC is inheriting and what she thinks are the main things in terms of resetting the Trinidad and Tobago economy to move forward. We'll be right back.
RSRR Productions has done it again. Married and Mischievous was a riot at Zappa. Now we head to Cipriani College for 2 nights only. On Saturday the 3rd of May at 8:30 p.m. and Sunday the 4th at 6:30 p.m. Tickets available now at usual outlets and from Wednesday the 30th of April at Cipriani College box office. This play is strictly for adults. Married and Mischievous is an experience you'll never forget.
S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rumbox, drinking out of the box.
Advertise with us on New Era TT Radio, the fastest growing streaming platform for talk in Trinidad and Tobago. Audio and video ads welcome. Elevate your brand with us. Connect with us at newerattradio@yahoo.com or call us at 299-5156. Now what are you waiting for?
Well, good morning, Dr. Attzs, and thanks for joining us on the Breakfast Show.
Good morning, and thanks for the invitation.
Good morning, Dr. Attzs.
I mean, of course, we're talking post-election, and we could start off with the basic question. Were you shocked at the level of defeat of the People's National Movement out of this election?
Well, I don't know. Being shocked is such a strange way of saying it. I'm not surprised of the outcome that the powers have shifted in terms of the administration, because I think, I was catching the last bit of the interview by former Minister of Public Utilities, and yes, I think he's one of those ministers who tried, in terms of his portfolio, to advance public utilities and the conversation, etc., and the availability of public utilities. So, as he said, I don't think it was for any want of trying. What I do believe is that there was a widening of the disconnect between the former government and the population. And I think the population more and more was feeling that the government didn't quite appreciate the pressure that the average citizen was under. And the final straw, I think, in the coffin was the increase in salaries. So all of that to say that I was not surprised because, you touch base with the people on the ground and there was a general level of discontent. So I'm not surprised by the outcome. The magnitude of it, and in some particular areas, that was a bit of a shock, to use that word. But yes, certainly I was not surprised by the outcome because it is clear that, between the cost of living issues, the forex issues affecting small and medium enterprises, the crime situation, and then inside of all of those, there would have been a lot of other underlying issues that people may have that really brought the population to a point where it was no surprise. And you had an election campaign by the UNC and the coalition of interest partners, you had an election campaign that was just touching people. I mean, the jingle, when UNC wins, everybody wins. You know, the persons they had on their platforms who were speaking the language of the average person. So I mean, the outcome, I think everything kind of, led to the outcome that we've seen.
Yeah, well, let's chat a bit about the UNC's campaign and the promises that they make. How realistic are they in light of the fact that the economy hasn't changed between the calling of the election and today?
Sure. And again, let me start by using the opportunity to essentially reinforce what you've just said. The country has been seeing a decline in revenues, and I'm saying the country, it's not the government. It's the country has been experiencing a decline in revenues because our primary earner of foreign exchange, a primary earner of revenue is the energy sector. And between what is happening globally in terms of energy prices being lower, coupled with lower production levels domestically, that combines to mean that the government has been receiving, and whichever government it is will be receiving, lower energy revenues. And this has been happening since 2014, 2015. So during COVID-19, and that's the other thing that I wish to mention, COVID-19, we had 2 years of negative prices because the world had shut down. So there were all sorts of geopolitical issues that led to lower demand for energy prices, which means countries such as Trinidad and Tobago that depended on these revenues, we really were in a bit of a sticky situation. So you've had these rapid declines in energy revenues affecting the government's ability to do what they plan to do. You had the 2 years of COVID that were absolutely disastrous, but we got some kind of relief only on account of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which led to Russia kind of cutting off their supplies as part of their geopolitical strategy to deal with people who were upset with them, countries that were upset with them for having invaded Ukraine. So that benefited countries like Trinidad and Tobago because the prices went up a little bit because there was a shortage of supply. Russia is one of the major players in the global energy sector. So when they decided that they would cut off their supply, prices went up and Trinidad got a little bit of a relief there. So fast forward to where we are now in 2025. And the incoming government, Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar and her team, have made a lot of commitments on the campaign trail. The most, the one that's top of everybody's minds is the commitment to start negotiations with public sector workers, the PSA, represented by the PSA, start negotiations at 10%. And that was very carefully worded. The Prime Minister designate repeated it on election night when she was giving her victory speech, that they will start negotiations at 10%. And I think that was in direct response to what the former Minister of Finance was offering different bargaining units and different unions. He was offering them between 4 and 5%, which is what he said the government at the time could afford. So Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar and her team upped the ante and said we will start at 10%. So that's one of the big ticket items. And then the flip side of that, so that's an expenditure item. The flip side of that is that Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar and her team indicated on the campaign trail that they will remove the property tax, which was a thorn in the side of homeowners because this was an additional cost that people had to pay for. And there was a lot of conversation around that and a lot of noise around that since the PNM government announced that they were going to reintroduce the property tax. And Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar also said that she would remove the online tax of 7%, which the PNM government introduced in 2017. So let me just deal with those revenue side incomes because those two taxes were a source of revenue for the government. Now, when the budget was presented for 2025, last October, when the Minister of Finance, then Minister of Finance, Imbud, presented the budget, the estimated revenue to the government of Trinidad and Tobago from the property tax was about $125 million. That is one of the sources of revenue that they were planning to get. The online tax of 7%, since it was introduced in 2017, has brought in an estimated $400 million to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And the online tax, just to remind persons, when you shop online from any one of those major department stores or platforms, and it has to come in via courier, charge an online tax of 7% in addition to the other customs duties, etc. So when you combine shortfall in revenue with the proposals to increase expenditure, and one of those big ticket expenditure items is in fact the public sector wages. One of the things that I have said in commentary as the election campaigning was taking place is that I think the government, both the now former government and the incoming government, needs to manage the expectations of the population, because we are in a very difficult economic time in terms of government revenues. And I gave all of that backstory and that narrative just to kind of share some of the high-level issues involved in where we are as an economy. So a 10% increase to public sector workers could well find the government's monthly bill, because the government has to manage all of the various ministries. And in the manifestos from the UNC, there is mention of having additional ministries. So even if you separate some ministries, there is mention of having ministries. So there is now a mention of a Ministry of Justice, a Ministry of Home Affairs, and one or two other ministries. I don't remember the details, but there is mention of additional ministries in their manifestos. So that is going to be a cost. There is mention of establishing or building, creating, I forget the language that is used, a forensic science complex, something that is needed to support what is happening in the country, and forensic center. So there are some cost drivers mentioned in the UNC's budget, which are both capital costs, like if you want to build something new.
Well, the restart of the Petrotrin refinery also, that's going to take a lot of money.
That's a big one. Yeah, that's a big one. The restart of the Petrotrin refinery is a multi-billion-dollar kind of cost driver. And then you have recurrent expenditures. So things like increasing the public sector workers' salaries by 10%, that could well find an additional, if we have, let's say 60 to 100,000 public sector workers, that could well find us close to $1 billion in recurrent expenditure, additional recurrent expenditure every month. So I hope, that kind of paints a picture that we're sending up the cost, but we're reducing the revenue. So it means that it is going to be even more challenging for the government, and I'm using now the government, meaning going forward, the UNC-led government, it is going to be even more challenging for them to manage our affairs. So one of the things as an economist, and I understand that, when you're campaigning, you will say things to win the electorate. And it's only when you get into the position, you understand what is actually facing you. Now, many of the persons in the UNC would have been in opposition, so they will have access to documentation. So it's no secret. But I mean, when you're sitting in the chair and you now have to manage the affairs, you then have to take off your campaigning hat, put on your leadership hat. And I suspect that the government is going to find that it has to adjust some of the expectations, adjust some of the expectations of the electorate. And in doing so, I would encourage the government to maintain clear lines of communication, explaining to the population. One of the things that I have felt over the years is that the population doesn't understand the realities of Trinidad and Tobago. So we've had 9 years of budget presentations under the former government where all of the themes of the budgets were brighter days ahead, things are looking clearer, sustainability, on the road to recovery and everything. And I think that in itself may have led the population, insofar as the population follow these conversations, may have led the population to think that, we're in a good place. We are in a challenging space. We have been in a challenging space for much of the last 10, 11 years. And that would be reflected in things like economic growth. So people, my colleagues as economists will always talk about economic growth. And because Trinidad and Tobago's economy is heavily driven by economic growth, is heavily driven by what happens in the energy sector, we would have seen low, slow, negative economic growth in Trinidad and Tobago. So there is a reality that is going to hit home, that ought to hit home very soon, in terms of what can in fact be delivered in terms of what was said on the campaign trail. As
I hear you, Dr. Attzs, but come on, the opposition, the people who advise the opposition, well, the soon-to-be government, in terms of economic policy, they read the central bank reports.
They are aware, yeah.
They read the IMF reports, the Standard and Poor's reports.
Yes.
They will have access to government documentation. So they're not coming into the situation blind. So they are aware, they must be aware of what level the economy is operating at in terms of income, in terms of expenditure, because we've had deficit budgets for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so they must have a plan. Either they're going to increase the deficit in terms of the budget financing, because they have a midterm review that is coming up now. As soon as you enter,
that's due, yeah, in short order, yeah.
Yeah, and ministries don't really care in terms of government transition. They will know we need X, we need Y, we need Z. If I understand how ministries work.
I agree with you on that, and which is why I made the statement that when you're on the campaign trail, you can often say pretty much anything, and then you'll have to adjust those expectations based on when you're in the leadership role, you're going to have a different disposition, which is why I said what I said a few minutes ago, and because you're absolutely correct. The opposition, and I also made mention of that, the opposition, they sit on the JSC, they sit on all of these committees, so they are aware of the documentation out there. When the IMF comes to do their Article 4 consultations in the country, they meet with the opposition as well. So they are aware, but I'm saying that the population needed to hear something positive, and on the campaign trail that was fed to the population. So I'm saying that now that the reality is facing us and the opposition is now the government, there has to be a management of expectations moving forward, because you are correct, to increase the spending simply widens the deficit. And when the UNC demitted office in 2015, we had one of the biggest budgets this country has ever seen, because during the period that they were in office, 2010 to about 2014, energy prices were extremely high. So there was a lot of revenue coming into the country. So there is a lot that has changed, and then geopolitically. So another forces impacting on the economics of Trinidad are the geopolitical winds that are blowing outside there. So you have the issue with Venezuela, you have the temperature coming out of Washington, D.C., that is impacting on us in different ways. So tariffs, the 10% tariff on Trinidad and Tobago's goods, but it's not just directly in Trinidad and Tobago, it's the tariffs that are being imposed on other countries with which Trinidad and Tobago engages in trade. So the cost is going to be passed on to consumers. So there are a lot of things now to be managed. So the conversation and the narrative coming out of the government, I think, is going to be a lot more tempered. And I am hoping that they use the opportunity, certainly in the early days, to have frank conversations with the population so that the population knows.
I hear you, but isn't that borderline, and hear me out, is that not borderline dishonest?
Yes.
Because you have the information, and you can't say I don't have the information. You could pretend you didn't have the information when you get into power and say, oh my God, we just looked at the treasury account. I'm just simplifying it.
Yeah,
and we now realize we can't give you 10%.
But it works both ways, The population also has to take a responsibility, because the population has seen, everybody's on social media. One of the things that I marvel about, everybody's on social media in one way or the other. Everyone gets information from Google, from wherever. But the population seems to not have internalized what is happening globally and how it is impacting on Trinidad and Tobago, because the population, I think, has reduced Trinidad and Tobago's circumstances to a political situation, when it is not a political situation, it's an economic situation. And it's an economic situation globally as well as nationally. Now, I would not use the word dishonest, because I was schooled many years ago by a former Minister of Finance that politics and economics are two different things. So politically, I can say anything, but economically, it's a different conversation. So while I think there is a responsibility on the part of the incoming government, and there was a responsibility, and when the comment was made about the 10%, many commentators, including myself, suggested in the public space that we need to manage the population's expectations. So what is going to happen now, I suspect, is that there is going to be some effort to meet some of those expectations, simply to say, well, it's a new new administration, etc. I don't know which of the expectations will be met or will not be met, but I do suspect that there will be some widening of the fiscal deficit initially, and there may be some drawdown on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund to manage some of the additional expenditures, to bring some level of stabilization. I don't agree with that approach, but I suspect that is something that will happen in the short term. In the medium to long term, I think different kinds of decisions may take place.
Now, Dr. Attzs and even Richard or anyone listening, correct me if I'm wrong. The PNM on the campaign trail, they were saying that two things that the UNC sure to do based on their promises. One is the devaluation of the dollar, 15-1, and two, to go to the IMF. Now, the UNC, as far as I'm aware, did not say, listen, we are not going to devalue the dollar, and we are not going to go to the IMF. I don't know that they refuted it. They refuted those allegations that the PNM were making on the platform. How do you see that playing out?
All right. So neither of those options, going to the IMF or a devaluation, is politically palatable. So you wouldn't hear a response on the hustings. It would be so it being mentioned by the PNM would have been to bring some sobriety to the conversation, but it's also a fear-mongering, because you're kind of daring the then opposition, respond. And the UNC rightfully did not respond because, it's a kind of like a chicken here. They did not respond. And I would not have responded to it either. So let's examine what these two things mean. One, a devaluation to 15-1, I don't know where that magic number came from, but a devaluation to 15-1 means that the cost of everything in Trinidad and Tobago goes up immediately. The cost of everything. So the medicine that you buy, the cosmetics that you buy, all of the things that are imported, because we import everything, the groceries that you eat, the peas that you eat, the everything, the fertilizers that you for the farmers, everything, the cars that you drive, and we drive a lot of cars, everything immediately goes up. That does not benefit business persons, except in the profit margin, because they then have to pay more to import. And we have a foreign exchange challenge. So immediately, a 15-1 devaluation, everybody suffers, whether you're business, unless you're earning your own foreign exchange, and very few businesses earn their own foreign exchange, everyone is going to suffer. So the country is going to have a collective corruption, collective shock and awe effect. So that is not going to serve the political, because you want to enjoy a little bit of a honeymoon. You want people to like you, and you want things to, so you want to ease people into any kind of strain, because it's 5 years. It is not a sprint. So you're here for a little while. So I don't think that the devaluation, the 15-1, is going to come, certainly in the short term. And then related to that is the conversation around the IMF. The IMF is often projected in a negative light because of the experience that many Caribbean countries had back in the 80s And just to provide some of the history, what happened in the 1980s is that, let's take Trinidad and Tobago. So many Caribbean countries had IMF programs back in the 1980s, Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago. I'll just highlight those. Because we had what we call balance of payments problems. We were importing more than we were exporting, and it led to a situation where we could no longer maintain that imbalance in terms of the balance of payments. So you were spending more than you earning, had what we'd want to describe as inflated government expenditures. So the question was, why could you not bring your expenditures back in line with what you're earning? So, kind of like, we have a saying, you have champagne taste, but more be money. So the role of the IMF is really to help you kind of bring things in line. If you're earning a certain amount of money, you're really not supposed to be having persistent deficits. Now, if the IMF were to come in, they would essentially encourage you to reduce your expenditures. So they would look at where you are, try to trim off the fat, so to speak. So they would look at making things a lot leaner in the country. And that could impact on things like your levels of subsidies and transfers, some of which the former government, the PNM, had committed to doing. They had committed to looking at some of the transfers and subsidies. The decision to mothball the Petrotrin refinery was part of that because it was hemorrhaging. It was using a lot of money, but it was not essentially bringing back a return to the government. And at the time when the decision was taken to mothball the refinery, there was a bullet payment, a significant bullet payment in US dollars that was due. So the government then took the decision to mothball the refinery. So an IMF program is going to require you to look at subsidies and transfers. They're going to look at your transfers to state enterprises like your WASAs, your TNTech, your Caribbean Airlines, etc., etc. And they say, well, really, what's the return on the set of money that you paid them? Because you could be using this government money for something else. They're going to look at some of your social programs to see whether or not they are, in fact, helping people, or if they're simply perpetuating a cycle of dependency in the country. So the IMF is often a last resort when things get really, really bad. We happen to have a buffer in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So I suspect that rather than do anything draconian like the devaluation of 15-1, wherever that number came from, or going to the IMF, that is unlikely to be politically palatable for the new government. They don't want to start off in that way with the population. So I hardly think that they would do that in the short term. But things may change as the reality dawns on the government, but certainly, to my view, there is a need for very careful economic management moving forward, and careful economic management includes managing the expectations and even rolling back on some of the things. I mean, President Trump having declared Liberation Day in the United States with the long list of tariffs to all of these countries, it is reported that he's rethinking it because not a good idea, because he now understands imposing all of these tariffs on other countries, if you think that that will help make America great again, is actually going to increase the cost of living and drive inflation in the United States, which is not consistent with achieving the economic growth that he has promised.
What do you think are the positives, though, in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago moving forward? Because ultimately, there are certain tweaks that I assume governments can do to make us more competitive from a business point of view, to make us more competitive in terms of our exports, to facilitate innovation, things like that. So what are the key things, if you had to advise the government, what are the key points in the economy you would tell them to focus on?
Well, I think one of the things, in addition to kind of keeping an eye on the energy sector, because we're not going to move away from that immediately. It's not something that is, the pendulum is going to take some time to swing from there. And remember, if you think about our budgets annually, our budget's $55 billion. That's plenty kind of pebbles to put in a bucket. You have to find something that could help you raise that kind of revenue. So while you're keeping an eye on the energy sector, the traditional energy sector as we know it, oil and gas, I think the government has to focus on diversification. Yes, it's a dirty word. We've used it for the last 60 odd years, but I mean meaningful and aggressive diversification. Things like the green energy, so renewable energy, using some of the natural resources that we have, but inculcating in the future generations, because, you know, I think that in 5 years' time, a 15-year-old who may not even be interested in any of these issues happening now, a 15-year-old is going to be a 20-year-old, and he or she has to be prepared for what happens in 5 years' time. So things like inculcating conversations around the green economy, renewable energy, solar, wind. How do we do that? How do we use green energy in things like our farming? How do we tap into the orange economy? I know there have been conversations, but the conversations to my mind around the orange economy and creatives have always been kind of loose and yeah, you know, this person into creatives, but yeah, you know, it's the kind of thing it does do when you do other things, you know. But this is a large global economy. It's $1 trillion economy. You think of things like anime. You know, I'm surprised at the number of people who look at anime and, you know, are glued to their smartphones looking at anime. That is a creative economy. We have talent in Trinidad and Tobago, our carnival. You know, we just kind of look at the 2 days and all the flights and all kind of thing. But that people book flights a year in advance to come and participate in something. The rest of the world has capitalized on this Trinidad and Tobago carnival, this festival that we take for granted because it happens, you know, in spite of. So there are all of these elements of the creatives. You know, I'm a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, so there was a proposal in the PNM's manifesto, the Food and Rum Festival, which I think was a brilliant idea because it was an opportunity to have community-based creatives contributing to something, a food and rum festival that runs throughout the country, tapping into Maruga Rice, tapping into Tobago's Blue Festival, tapping into something that happens in Orapooch, tapping into something that happens in different parts of the country. So the creative sector, I think, has a lot of promise, but it has to be driven, and people need to understand the potential of the creative sector, the orange economy, as it's called. And then, of course, there is the blue economy. We sit here, the conversation around Tobago and sandals and whatever it is, and all of the noise that ensued, but there are opportunities. So think about it. You have sun, sea, and sand at the very core, but you also have other opportunities. Ecotourism. When you think of some of the things that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, some of the sites that we have, some of the nature naturally provided tourism product that we have outside of sun, sea, and sand that we can market, that we can harness, and that we can use to generate income. So there are all of these things that are untapped, I think, and that they provide potential. The UNC's manifesto mentioned paying greater attention to cannabis, and I know that will excite a lot of people, but I certainly would want to, to express some caution, because I think that there is a framework, an institutional and regulatory framework that has to be built that will take some time to allow us to realize the economic potential of cannabis. So yes, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry globally. Many countries have moved businesses into that direction in terms of different products that you can use, cannabis oil, etc., etc., etc. And so there is an opportunity, but I'm saying that it has to be regulated, investment, institutional supporting framework. So there are a number of positives, but I also want us to recognize the human capital in Trinidad and Tobago. And I think once you provide opportunities, our people will rise to the occasion. And there are also opportunities for upskilling and retraining people to help us as citizens support the economy moving forward.
Yeah. Are you willing to take some calls, Dr. Attzs?
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to open up our lines at this point for you to get interactive in the conversation. Of course, we are speaking to Dr. Marlene Attzs, a development economist, and speaking with us on the Breakfast Show this morning. So we now take your calls, 281-1315, 281-1315. You can direct call us or you can WhatsApp call us to get in on the conversation. Of course, we're talking the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, what the UNC is inheriting. Can fiscal discipline meet expectations on the political platform? I think that's a kind of generic overview of the conversation. And as we move forward into the next 5 years, and and
the thing about managing, while we're waiting for the calls and the WhatsApps to come in, the thing about managing the economy is that you might think locally, but you also have to think globally, because anything that happens in the rest of the world, many of the things that happen in the rest of the world impact on us in Trinidad and Tobago. So, that also has to, you have to have a world view in terms of how you're managing the Trinidad and Tobago economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the context beyond fiscal discipline, I mean, one of the age-old things that always crops up is the issue of business competitiveness.
Yes,
absolutely. I know Dr. Arjun, was it him? I can't remember which economist talked about it, but the issue of having a low import duty exemption increase. That makes sense. I know the Americans have, I think their limit is 800 US and less. You can bring into the country and you don't pay any duty. So it zooms through customs.
But the thing is that, all of these things that happen elsewhere that we would like to adopt wholesale, we need to kind of work on our discipline, because if it's $800, we will try to stretch it to $1,000 and we'll try to stretch it to $1,200. So while it is good to look at other countries and perhaps distill best practices, we also have to understand the lay of the land in Trinidad and Tobago. So that has to exercise fiscal discipline. And then we also have, in the context of all of these things, to manage the forex situation.
Yep. So
limited forex price. That will always be a pain point. So we have to look at ways of generating foreign exchange as well. So that means our exports. And one of the good things, one of the positives that will come out of a devaluation is that it makes our exports more competitive, so that we can earn more foreign exchange from, let's say, the manufacturing sector. But again, these things have to be calibrated
to suit the circumstances. I think we have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, morning, people. Okay, I have two questions. One, what are your thoughts on the cooperative economy and developing the resilience that we're talking, and the diversification? And the other question is, what is in this retooling and the diversification, the investment that need to be made in education, particularly tech box education, craft education, to supply the talent and the skill sets needed for the diversification? If you bring in manufacturing and stuff and things like that, what is that cost and what does it look like? Because when I talk to my people at the the chambers and things, they are seeing a lack in a faltering in craft skills. And if we have to go to manufacturing, bringing people to set up in the e-tech park thing, what is that investment looking like? I don't hear economists talking about that investment in education. Is it going to take is that $1 million? What's that cost factor in retooling the curriculum? And the other thing is the other aspect of UE innovation, because UE is a research and development university, and I have sat in some of the research and I've seen engineers making some very interesting things, but for the investor capital to come from the big corp to invest into that, to ramp it up. I saw an engineer creating a battery to carry electric, solar kind of thing. and they were saying that it was kind of advanced and they say, but the money to invest into these things, the investor capital is kind of bad. I know Dr. Keepness mentioned it in the idea of the investor capital, that is, it was on the Ministry of Planning thing, and then they had to take it away because they were saying that our corporate sector, they don't understand this investment capital. I forget what's the name again, what they call it again. When it's speculative, right? You're invested in innovation that can ramp up or it could die, and they don't understand that gamble and that part of the investment, which I guess the government will have to give certain amount of sureties in that. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are on that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I think there were 3 questions that you asked. In terms of the cooperatives, I don't know if you mean the cooperative movement in terms of credit unions. That's my interpretation. I don't know if you're still on the line. Is that what you meant?
He's got that, but I think that is what he meant.
I think that's what he meant. All right,
Yeah.
all right.
I think he meant. I think he meant like cooperative, as in community-focused economy building. I think it's something along that line, but I'm subject to correction.
Well, he said, it's on the chat, you know.
Cooperative, so it sounded. He's on the chat.
This question is on the chat. What about cooperative economy in creating innovation?
No, that's not what I got when he spoke. I got different things. He asked about the cooperatives in terms of the economy. So I don't know if that was the credit unions. So I will respond in that, as my understanding. The cooperatives continue to have a role in the economy. They provide support, particularly for persons who, at the community level, who may not otherwise be served by other financial institutions. So they continue to have a role, but I think part of the challenge with the cooperatives coming out of things like the Hindu Credit Union is the need for some regulation. So there has been some question around the regulatory framework for cooperatives, but they continue to function and they continue to provide play a significant role in terms of the economy. The second question that I gathered from the caller was about TechVoc and the need for that, and in the UNC's manifesto, they did mention to have a university for technical and vocational studies. I'm not too sure how that will look, if that will repurpose one of the existing facilities we have in terms of the UTTs or whatever the case might be. But I also want to add that the MIC and the NESC have been very purposeful over the years in terms of training, particularly for the energy sector. So I'm not too sure when the caller spoke about TechVoc, what he had in mind, but I do agree and I do know that there has been mention in the UNC's manifesto of a need to focus on technical and vocational training and to raise the ante so that there is certification available to fill that gap. So one of the questions that I ask myself is, we are pushing for electric vehicles, for EVs to come into the country, but that is going to be a different skill set from the traditional mechanic as we know it. So you need persons who are trained in these areas to help deal with that. When you have air conditioned units, the air conditioned units now have this label on green energy because they use different kinds of gases. So there are opportunities for us to talk about these things. When we talk about the blue economy or having a hotel that is a green hotel, it's a different set of skills. So you have smart rooms where they operate on the basis of body temperature. So, we like to leave lights on or air conditioning on in spaces and that kind of thing. So if you're not in the room, it will automatically switch off. So there are opportunities for people to be trained. There are opportunities to recycle gray water so that you use gray water to have a farm or whatever the case. So there are lots of opportunities inside of that in our education system. In some spaces, those discussions have been taking place, but it has to permeate, to my mind, it has to permeate every level. So our early childhood, our primary, our secondary, which leads me to the third point about the caller in terms of the innovation. And yes, at the University of the West Indies, you will have innovation taking place in other places as well, innovation taking place. But innovation has to be, again, I think, inculcated into our education system. So that is not really only at the tertiary level that we have the conversations around innovation and the funding of innovation. When in one of my previous lives, I served on the Economic Development Advisory Board, one of the recommendations that we made very early is a separation of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund so that we know what we're using for stabilization, we know what is being left for future generations in terms of heritage. But we also suggested that we use part of the interest earned on the Heritage and Stabilization Fund to support an innovation fund so that innovators who have innovations that can yield economic returns can in fact have some kind of access to funding to help them start up before they become fully viable. So that was never operationalized. So there continues to be the challenge for innovators to have access to angel funding. So that is something that the government may wish to look at in terms of how do you
Can you hold 1 minute there, Dr. Attzs? I think the caller came back inside just to clarify his initial question. So, Dean, quickly go ahead with it.
All right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. I was the question around cooperatives as like in agricultural cooperatives to resustain communities and set up agricultural spots and stuff like that. I know we have. I think El Dorado Cooperative was once the
so you're talking. So is it that you're distinguishing from things like the farmers markets? Because the farmers markets provide that kind of cooperative. It's not localized in the community. So they come to a central spot, but the farmers market essentially provide that kind of cooperatives around the agriculture sector because it's only locally grown and produced food and agricultural products that are sold there. So it does fulfill that kind of cooperatives, but it's not localized in the community.
Yeah, well, I see corporate because when I talk to farmers and because I'm around farmers a lot and how we maximize our resources as small farmers to move up to medium and maybe to larger, it takes a cooperative labor effort between us so that how we do that, and that is one of the bigger problems of ramping from one level to the next level and expanding on labor.
I think there are different models that can be applied because if I'm a farmer, because I'm also very close to a lot of farmers, and I'm going to give the example of a farmer, with whom I'm extremely close, coming out of Brazil village. That farmer is not going to get the kind of demand for his produce if he were to operate in that area, as he does operating in the Savannah market on a Saturday and operating in the Arima market on a Sunday. So I think the idea of the cooperatives, and there are other farmers who operate in the Shogunas farmers market, not the Shogunas big market, in that sense, operating the Shogunas farmers market. So it's really a question of economies of scale, where you're going to get the kind of demand to allow you to make this economically viable. I'm not saying that's the only kind of support that farmers need, but I don't know that in my view, that there are different models of it, and the farmers market as it currently exists, it's not perfect. So one of the things that the farmers markets often suffer from, certainly the ones in the Savannah, is not a fixed space that they have. So whenever there's a major activity in the Savannah, they're displaced, and that is one of the pain points for them and a sore point for the customers, including persons like myself. So the cooperatives model, yes, I agree with you, but I don't know that it needs to be necessarily something like going back to the El Dorado cooperatives, which has not been in existence for decades.
Yeah.
And it has been replaced by something like the farmers market model, where you encourage persons. So it's not just agricultural produce. It is also juices, breads, things that are locally grown, craft, etc., that can come in to the market space, plants, anything, culture. and you encourage that. And to me, that provides the farmers with a space. So I don't know if so that's my take on the questions that the caller would have raised.
Yeah, but I don't think we have any. Do we have any other callers, Sir Charles?
No, we can go ahead.
All right. So I mean, we're about to close off the interview, Dr. Attzs, and I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. I don't know if you have any closing comments with regard to the overview of what the UNC is going to be facing as they enter government.
Yeah, I mean, my comment, I will close the same way I started. I think fiscal discipline and fiscal responsibility should be paramount. Should be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th thing, because if we don't exercise that fiscal discipline, notwithstanding the promises, I think we have to use the opportunity to let the population understand where we are and, where we want to go as a country over the next 5 years. So managing the expectations and, probably pulling back on some of the commitments that were made on the campaign trail. Not all of them. I suspect they're going to want to keep some of the campaign promises, because an integral part of the incoming government's partnership is a labor faction. So I think you would not want the labor faction. You would not want to renege on any commitments that you would have made to the labor faction. But I do think that there needs to be a management of the expectations moving forward.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Attzs, for joining us this morning. Of course, we'll still keep the conversation going because there are always issues that crop up in terms of the economy and decisions that are made. So I'm sure we'll have you back on to discuss those developments as they occur.
Absolutely. Thanks, Amel, for inviting me, and have a good day, everyone.
All right. So that's Dr. Marlene Attzs, who was, of course, who is a development economist, and joining us. Wendell seems to have disappeared. But before we end off the show, we'll take a little break.
RSRR Productions has done it again. Married and Mischievous was a riot at Zappa. Now we head to Cipriani College for 2 nights only. On Saturday the 3rd of May at 8:30 p.m. and Sunday the 4th at 6:30 p.m. Tickets available now at usual outlets and from Wednesday the 30th of April at Cipriani College box office. This play is strictly for adults. Married and Mischievous is an experience you'll never forget. S&H Rumbox, 137 Western Main Road, St. James, for all your retail and wholesale needs for alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. Call us at 686-0599 or visit us at 137 Western Main Road, St. James. S&H Rumbox, drinking out of the box.
Advertise with us on New Era TT Radio, the fastest growing streaming platform for talk in Trinidad and Tobago. Audio and video ads welcome. Elevate your brand with us. Connect with us at newerattradio@yahoo.com or call us at 299-5156. Now what are you waiting for?
So this is where we wrap up the breakfast show this morning, this Wednesday morning. Of course, we'll speak to you bright and early tomorrow morning where we'll have more guests weighing in on the issues affecting Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we're still talking post-elections. Of course, there may be more bacchanal to talk about tomorrow after the General Council meeting today in the PNM. You know there is going to be bacchanal to talk about, and we're here for the bacchanal. So we will keep you informed. Our bacchanal meter will be on for the rest of the day to make sure we get all of the news to tell you. And of course, Wendell has got inside news. So he'll be able to give us the inside details of who slapped who felt what, and whatever went on.
Because, trust me, tension's going to be high in our room today, boy. Oh, good. Pressure. I wonder if they want some drinks, boy, for after. You can come and check Rumbox.
But make sure they have adequate security.
Nah, they always have. Well, I mean, as former prime ministers, they always entitled to security, So it's two people go have security
to intervene. The security to intervene.
We'll find out. you know, but it'll be interesting. It's interesting times in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, we've been here before. We were here before in 2010, not too long ago. That 15 years went fast, and we are back to that area. So let's see how it goes, and wish the government all the best, and that they try to at least fulfill some of those. I do expect that they fulfill all. I am not unreasonable. They can't fulfill all, you know what I mean? But I wish them the best, you know?
Right.
So folks, one life, live it. I had to run because I'm preparing to get downtown for a certain time. Right? So have an absolutely wonderful day. Tomorrow, Baccarat Thursday. What it is?
Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow be Thursday. So remember to laugh and smile and laugh. It's great for your health. And we speak to you bright and early tomorrow morning. Of course, this has been the show.
Yeah. Wake up, it's a brand new dawn. The breakfast show got the vibes turned